and stupid. But how's everyone doing though? Hope you're having a good day as well. Yes, that's kind of the plan for today. Today we're gonna be doing some VTuber analysis on design, VTuber design analysis. So here's kind of the TLDR. This is not a critique. We're not gonna be critiquing things. Mostly just talking about character design. And I got a friend today. I got a friend of the show, TBSkyen, here with us. Yeah, way to go. Let me just unmute. There you go. How you doing, my friend? Glad to have you here. There you go. We are now live. Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
There we go.
How you doing, my friend?
I am doing well, although my model is looking angry right now. There we go. Hotkeys.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. That's why I leave chat to control my things. The only thing that is tracked is my face. I just let people have fun with the toggles. I have a tendency to be very bad with technology. Whatever can break will break at any moment. Well, how you doing though? Hope you're having a good day, my friend. Busy as always.
I am doing reasonably well. Bit sleep deprived, but doing reasonably well.
I've said this before we started the stream. I've yet to meet a content creator that is not sleep deprived. I think it just kind of comes with the job. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, this curse laid on us by a witch or something. Who knows?
I mean, do you? I mean, let's be honest. Do you really think somebody neurotypical could make YouTube content and be successful? What would you do? Oh, I slept 8 hours a day and I went to my job and I did fine. I had no issues.
Yeah, I mean, people claim that there are like neurotypical content creators. They say that. I've heard that conspiracy theory. I'm not sure I believe it. It seems a little far-fetched, honestly. Like it's the kind of thing that like it's an internet rumor. I think it's like, oh, I know someone whose cousin's friend is neurotypical and they make YouTube videos. Like, I don't believe it.
Theoretically, it could be a thing. You know, in theory, it could be a thing, but I've never seen it in practice. Is it working? It should be working. It is working perfectly. All right. Just making sure that it's all, nothing is breaking, things that have a tendency to break. That's actually when I was, okay, on the topic of neurodivergence, one time, the first time that I ever got approved to a front page on Twitch, we decided it was on a No Nut November joke. It was a No Nut November joke. I just made a cream pie, like a baking stream, and I titled, "I can't believe they let me do a cream pie." Again, I don't think a neurotypical person could think of something this stupid, but I always prepare everything so nothing breaks, because it just kind of happens. But here's, I'm gonna give you the TLDR. Let's give you the TLDR so we can kind of put everything on the same page. Just to think, this is not an art critique. We're not gonna be here shit talking people's artworks, especially because art is an expression, and people are on different places on their journey. It's not about oh, is your art better? This is not about technique. This is not about that kind of stuff. This is about design and intentions. So my idea was,
I certainly would never apply the same lens to someone's personal VTuber design that I would to a AAA games character, for example.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense to judge them on the same premise, because they're not doing the same thing. A VTuber's character design is broadly speaking designed to be, this is how I want to present myself. It's an expression of something personal, at least when they're good. So I'm not gonna sit here and shit on it the way that I would a Riot Games League of Legends champion or whatever.
And not even just that. VTubing takes a lot of different things. I'm notorious of being on the line saying Gorillas, for example, is kind of VTubing. But I think, especially online, many people take many different approaches, which is what I think is very interesting about this medium, right? For example, there's people that just do art. My girlfriend, for example, my partner, she is technically a VTuber, but she's just an artist. She just makes the models and sells the models. She just is for about that live 2D technology. Some people take a different approach where they go in a completely different style. For example, a few honorable mentions. I'm not bringing them as on the show for this analysis, because I wanted everybody that participates to have offered their image. But a few mentions that I can bring on the topic of being very unique is like pumpkin spice. There's like TB also mentioned off stream the orc guy that is in the office, right?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the guy, but like an orc in like a dress shirt and a tie, like sort of office job sort of thing, which I think is like delightful. There is a thing with VTubers like where there's definitely a standard template for what a VTuber is.
Exactly.
That like, and I think that's enforced in part also by the technology, like the technology, the live 2D, all of that. Everything that's made to project VTubers, to create VTubers, it does tend to favor a certain kind of character design, right? Like it does tend to privilege a certain type of character design. Specifically, the hyper flatness of like anime style is very well suited to it, and the technology is built to work with that stuff. The 3D model I'm using here anime, is like, yeah, this 3D model I'm using here wouldn't really work in like a live 2D kind of setup because the software isn't meant to render something like this.
Exactly. I always like very roughly equate it to like a very high definition PNG with like a bunch of different like 200 something layers stacked on top of each other and moving. It's actually kind of funny because I've been a VTubing since 2020. This whole like content thing is just like a quarantine hobby that got out of control for me.
Yeah, many such cases. It's a story. It's a story we hear.
But something that I can talk about in the single technology is like, for example, the ways of rigging. Like, just not just the technology got better, but the artists that do learn how to do different things with the tools they had available. And again, I think that like VTubing is such an interesting meme, and this is what I am trying to get discussion going on the stream, because I feel like as creators, we tend to default on a lot of things just because that's the way it's always been. Like, I always say this jokingly, like, just think of how many pink cat girls there are in VTubing space. But I think it's because it's a mix of like idol culture and just like people, we as like kind of defaulting on like what works and just going with that and not even thinking about it. And this is where I kind of want to get at, because bringing different ideas and see how people approach those ideas, I think can broaden not just the creators themselves, but everybody on the space. You know what I mean? Which I think is the beauty of VTubing. I think it's like all about self-expression.
Yeah, I looked into like the 2D rigging that's used for like VTubers once upon a time some years ago, and the complexity of it is astonishing. Like, because that's the thing, like it involves like many TV shows like are produced with similar, not necessarily the exact same tools, but like the whole concept of like rigging up and manipulating 2D objects and like dozens or hundreds of layers on top of each other in order to create like a moving cartoon character. That's how a lot of like Cartoon Network shows are also produced. That's how a lot of like the show, like the like cartoon shows that get dumped onto Netflix, it's a production style. So it's fully in the realm of traditional animation, just through different means.
Yeah, I think it's really like, given that freedom, I think just because of the sheer amount of people that do it as well. Like, there's many accounts on Twitter as well that I follow that share like, oh, I made this really cool overlay. There's one also that I love mentioning. It's not about them being a VTuber, but like completely going on a side tangent here. But they completely styled the train after like a Ghibli style like world train station. And like every single notification is like a little guy that just pops up, walks in the background, does the animation, and then goes away. And again, this is all in the realm of like, I think this is all in like connected kind of. And this also goes for character design, I think. There's like so many interesting things that I would never like really think about that people have made, and I think is just like such a cool thing to have in this space, right? Yeah, and I think I thought you were like the perfect guy to like come and have this conversation with, you know what I mean? Because again, I think this is just like right up your alley. How did you even like?
Yeah, I mean, I've been
like,
considering doing. I've had scripts and like false starts multiple, like over a year now, on a video that I might want to do about VTubing as character design, like the conventions and the practices that exist in VTubing. It's mostly just a problem of I don't feel familiar enough with VTubing as like a whole space that I feel like I can really make a video about it. Like maybe about the HoloLive house style, maybe about like the big agencies and stuff, but VTubing itself feels like a much more diverse space. that I don't think I have a handle on yet. So like
think it
a stream
would be
like this
better,
was, for me, it's like, oh cool, like it's opportunity to test out and see if I have any idea what I'm talking
about. Like
about.
getting to know the waters as well. Like again, you are definitely right in the sense that it's like a very diverse space. So I think if you're gonna like take it as an analysis lens, it might be better to like limit to like a certain, oh, this group, this style, because if you shake it, there's always gonna be like somebody doing some different quirk. I wouldn't, I don't know if you call yourself a VTuber, but this kind of design of yours, like a more simplistic style, is also something that is very interesting. It's hard to do. It's very hard to make a unique design, simple design that is also unique enough to be memorable. But it is certainly something that is on this space as well prevalent. There's like you can, whatever you think, somebody's like giving it a try and like being a bit weird. But anyway, that's where this comes in. That's where this comes in. I've asked people on Twitter to send their designs and pretty much like a little paragraph of saying like what were they going for? What was their idea when they were designing their characters, right? What were they going for? What was the... Also, YouTube fucking crashed again. Oh, the technology is just... it's like I'm allergic to technology. It just keeps breaking.
Yeah, trying to stream on two platforms is always...
No, it's just the PC.
The balancing act.
It's just the PC. I'm currently traveling, so this PC is kind of struggling as well. If this was the regular setup, it would have been a lot fine, but it was working fine yesterday.
Yeah,
but this is Chunky Lotus. This is a friend of mine as well, so I think I should abstain myself from my preconceived notions. But she designed her character to be a cosmic 200-meter tall dragon cat, mostly dragon with a cat mouth. People come to the conclusion that I'm an aquatic creature due to the blue color, but I've never confirmed such allegations. In fact, I dwell in space. And here she is.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, VTubing has this, like, people do make up some really interesting wild character concepts for it. I did do a professional, like, very, very occasionally I'll do professional design review for people if they're willing to pay for it, and it's expensive, so I don't recommend it to casuals. But there was one like who had like a cowgirl VTuber, and I thought initially like, oh, okay, that's pretty simple. But then as they began to add the details and the ideas of what they wanted to do with the character, it became this very interesting. Oh shit, this person is actually trying to have some sort of commentary in their character design on the meatpacking industry in their VTuber character design, and that was interesting to try and give feedback on to help them sort of express that idea through a VTuber character design, which was also like a sexy cowgirl at the same time. It's interesting.
I mean,
like,
being appealing is like, again, I don't fault people for wanting their character to be appealing, right? There's definitely some people that make some scary VTubers with like some freaky stuff, but usually people make it appealing because, like, you know, it's the online space, you want to get views, and that's just kind of how it be.
Plus it's self-representation. That's a thing of like, I have seen people doing some pearl clutching about like, oh, VTubers, like it's all the big titty and like sex appeal thing. Like, it's also people want to feel sexy and present themselves in a way that is hot and that's attractive, and that's the difference, right? Like, because I am very critical of like unnecessary sexualization in character design when it happens in commercial products, right? Like a lot of the time when it's this, like, we default to the lowest common denominator, which is show titty, and then we don't have to have a good idea on the top of that. Yeah. But that's a very different thing than I want to present myself in a certain way. I want to feel a certain way. I want to present a certain image of myself.
Just take this designer idea. I don't think that. I mean, of course, it is very appealing as you would expect, right? But I don't think anybody thinks of themselves. I think it's actually just about like also like a fantasy kind of, right? It's like it's like a medium that is not. It's like a medium that is not limited to. It's almost like it's almost stops being on the realm of streaming and goes into acting almost. Where it becomes like kind of a performance.
There's a lot of role play. Like, there's a lot of role playing in there. Like, a lot of people who do VTubing will also do quite well in LARPing, I think. Because there's definitely an overlap between. But returning to the thing actually that's on the screen that we're supposed to be talking about, appeal is clearly a part of the design here as well. Like, this is a skimpy outfit, and it's intentionally designed to be sexy. And like, that's a thing you can critique under certain circumstances, but when it's a person's personal representation, it's like, no, if the concept, the purpose of a VTuber character design fundamentally, yes, it's for content creation, it's for like, you want to make sure that like you get views and all that stuff, but fundamentally it's about, does it make you happy? Does it make you happy to present yourself with this look, with this style? That's the main thing. And if presenting yourself sexy, horny, like kinky, whatever, or like the other way around, cozy and
I've been
wholesome.
abstaining myself from this one specifically because I don't want to. I want this to be like a almost like a first impressions, almost. But this person is like super wholesome. So this design, I think, is like kind of it almost like creates a duality from what you would expect to what you get, and it's kind of funny to me. Also, like,
yeah, and that's something I see like VTubers play with a lot. Also, like, you'll get VTubers who have the cutest little anime girl designs, and then they open their mouth and the filthiest shit you've heard in your life starts falling. I've seen those clip compilations.
It happens. That
good
is
Lord.
a thing in this space.
That's a whole style of VTubing, right? Is to play with the gap between like, the character
gap
design
moe
and then the filthy
that is
mind
gonna
behind
happen
it.
on this stream. There's a few characters that play on the gap moe kind of thing. This is something that is gonna happen. Although also I've seen like. I guess it's just because this is not something that I'm like too familiar. But how would you design a creature that lives in space? I've seen people complain that it shouldn't just be like a regular person. That much feels obvious because like,
I mean,
why would it?
Nothing can really live in space because once you get out into like deep, like stuff starts approaching absolute zero for temperature, right? So you can't. So realism, I don't think should really enter into it. Like realism doesn't enter into it. If you want to design a creature that looks like lives in space. Yeah, it's like that's the point when you start looking for, okay, what's the existing semiotics that are available to draw from, right? Like, what does a space creature look like in popular imagination? Because again, with character design, it's not just about making the thing work with its own internal lore. Because like you can always define an internal lore for your character that says, well, they look like this because of X, right? Like because of a scientist made them like. You can always come up with a reason, but the question is, does it read to an audience? And I'll say. My initial impression on looking at this character, I would have picked them as a space creature. I like because of the drag wings, because of the coloration, because it's a sort of anime girl design. I think it falls more into the space fantasy, right? Like it looks more.
Oh my god, my internet
than something
is
that's associated with space and sci-fi. So like I wouldn't peg it as a space creature specifically. Space, when we look at design, it often like blue is definitely that's in there. It plays with purple, it plays black, it plays with various like forms of neon lighting, things like that, stuff that associate with like the aurora borealis, starlight, things like that. A little bit of that is missing from at least from the we have there. That's maybe something you'd apply in an overlay over the course of the stream.
That could be a thing. Space is very weird as well, so there's a lot you can draw from. To like really make
like
it
that's the other thing is like
pop.
When you think of space aliens, there's a long rich history of in sci-fi of like a million kinds of space alien designs that you can draw from in order to get people to switch their mindset. Oh, this isn't fantasy, this is sci-fi. You can also do it with a little bit of technology, a little bit of like something that looks a bit like a spacesuit, something that just has a little bit of a glowing light thing on it that sort of implies tech. Absolutely, like that can get you towards the space thing, because as the person themselves say, people think it's an aquatic creature because of the blue coloration, because blue tends to code for ocean. So incorporating a little bit more purple, incorporating a little anything like glowing star motifs, stars, galaxies, things like that in the jewelry and decoration.
Reminds me of the. I don't know if you played Azura's Wrath, like. These kinds of like
all
giants,
the cutscenes of it,
where they just have these like just completely unrealistically huge like creatures, and they just like they have like these like fantasy motifs around them that don't really make any sense. They're more like, I think they're like inspired in Chinese culture, but it's not like meant to be
inspired by deities and gods
related to
and
space. It's more like a god almost. That is also something that you could go for, like a more. It's just fantasy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, if we're talking about trying to make the character look big in terms of like, because like size in any character is always going to be contextual. It depends what they are depicted next to. Any character can look big or small depending on how they are presented next to their environment. But there are things you can do to make the character themselves look bigger than they are. And like one of the common things, one of the classic things, you can notice this if you ever pay attention to the Hulk's character design in any Marvel thing. His head is tiny relative to his body. And the reason it's tiny relative to his body is to make him look bigger, right? To make his muscularity read as even more swollen. And you can play with some of that. Like that's where you could get into like looking at fetish art actually for inspiration. If you want a character to look really, really, really tall and large, just as a base part of the character design, giantess kink artists know how to do that. And one of the tricks is to make the head just a little bit smaller than it needs to be, because that makes the whole body look bigger. You can also do stuff like lengthen the proportions to a slightly unnatural degree, slightly longer legs than would actually be proportional, longer arms than would actually be proportional. That all helps size the character up, right? Like make them look larger, make them look more astonishingly big. But the main thing I would do to make a character like that appear big is to have in the overlay, just like have a little planet that's floating in the overlay, or some mountains, like something that provides a context for scale.
Really cool. That is actually really cool to have. And I think that because she is supposed to be like a giantess, I think she like changes her like fantasy from like being like kind of like in a planet and like in space. But I think that is definitely like something that is cool, because like you said before, it's supposed to be like about scale, right? And the design itself almost like doesn't matter. It just feels like, where do you want to go with that? Like you can have like a know-how, like not a method almost of like these kind of things. For example, the anatomy that you said, the proportions, the relativity, but also be like, oh, this is just fantasy, right? This is not. She's like, for example, I think like I'm very into nerdy video essays, but I think like if up to a certain scale, like even if you were to touch it, your own gravity would just destroy planets, because it would just be so huge if you were to have like that kind of size. So just play with the fantasy and just be like, yeah, it's fantasy. Just, you know what I mean? Just go with the flow.
Like League of Legends actually, it has a skin line called the Dark Star skins, and some of them are really good at doing that thing of like,
I am sorry to say, I play League of Legends. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, no, don't tell it. I played League of Legends years ago, and the curse has followed me ever since. But like the Dark Star skins in League of Legends have some parts that really good job of like how do you make a character appear huge by scale?
Exactly.
So that's a good place to go if you're looking for design reference.
It is one of my favorite designs as well. Although I think we should probably keep the tangents to a minimum. But I think it's one of the skin lines that I think kind of like lost itself almost. Because it's just,
yeah, I mean, it's suffered the same problem that all skin lines in League of Legends do, which is that they just pump more and more and more skins into them, and eventually you run out of good ideas, because you're always gonna run out of good ideas, right? That's just kind of inevitable.
But yeah, so, I totally think
that's a problem with commercialism, right? Like, is Riot Games, oh, this skin line is successful, then more of them. Do we have a good idea for it? Who cares? More.
But I think that's like where kind of like VTubing comes into mind, because people can, like, again, it's always a lot of pop culture, but there's like all kinds of fantasy. You have like D&D inspired VTubers, sci-fi, horror. I've seen some genuinely freaky and inspired shit. One of my known friends has a VTuber that she's just the lower half of the body, and her overlay is just a TV like Samara from The Ring.
Oh, cool.
And that's like, again, you can do so much. And I think because VTubing is like very indie by nature by now, like it used to be very corporate, but right now most of the VTubers that you see are going indie, or just like are just somebody that just did their model themselves. And I think because of that,
thank God they are as well, because the stuff I hear about the
attachment to needing to be commercial. Right, it loses that necessity of being commercial, being like it needs to sell. Surely there are VTubers that focus on that, of course, but a lot of people just do what they like, and I think that's like awesome. But that was Chunky Lotus.
I think it was like the whole corporate arc of VTubing started with Kizuna Ai, more or less, right? Like I think that was the inflection point at the beginning of corporate VTubing, was Kizuna Ai becoming really successful, and then a lot of stuff followed from there. I think Lucian, one of my friends, Lucian, is in chat, might be able to speak to that a little bit more.
I think they have sent the design as well, so I'm pretty sure they're gonna pop up on the list as well. I have not organized this. This is just on the how when it showed up on the page for me, and how I copy pasted onto the overlay. So this, however, on the completely different kind of fantasy, this is Anarchy VT. Wanted to encourage cosplay characters they love, regardless of size and shape or color, inspired by muses from Hercules, and wanted to mix them with sewing elements from a few modern influences. And if you see, I can zoom in a little bit as well if needed. She has like little like motifs of needles. The earrings are supposed to be like a needle case as well. She has like a little bracelet with like a cushion, like a needle cushion. And the rest of it is like very like Greek fantasy inspired.
Yeah,
as you can see,
it's I can definitely see the influence from the muses from Hercules is playing in there.
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting character design. I like that. That's quite cool.
Although I am disappointed because I have seen their profile. I don't know them personally, but they've made such a cool character. And this was two people independently that have made this idea, so I didn't feel the need to invite them. But their recent design, I believe, incorporated gorgons with the style of dreads for like black hairstyles.
Yeah, and then it's like it turns into serpents. Oh, that's very
That
cool.
is inspired but I also like this as well, where she is like very clearly like portray this. I believe this is supposed to be like not really a self-insert, but like a lot of these VTubers are also self-inspired. They take like a not really fantasy, like an idealized version of themselves, and just like put themselves on these fantasy, because I think a lot of VTubers do that because it comes naturally to make their content themselves. Like it just literally puts you on their shoes, kinda. But that's like really cool as well. Like really cool. The shoes as well.
The fucking heel of the shoe being a sewing machine. That shit bangs. That is killer. That is absolutely killer. Exactly. That's a very, very cool character design idea. Probably not gonna show up very well on a VTubing stream, but like as a little character detail, that's very good. I like that. And like the space we're operating here is like clearly this is more in terms of like this is more theater costuming than it's like historical costuming, right? Like we're definitely operating in the space of
pop
like
culture,
what I
right?
like. Yeah,
like
internally I've come to term it gacha style design, and that's not a derogatory, like that more in the sense of there is a certain aesthetic of costume design that exists within, for example, gacha. Like that's very prominent within gacha. That's why I associate it with it. But where the point of the costume design is to be extremely appealing and in your face, but considerations for practicality are not really a part of that. That's very common in VTubing as well. Like a lot of characters have costumes that are not practical to wear in any shape or form because it's like I think you would be cold if you had such a plunging neckline in the middle of winter.
I mean, listen, I don't know about that. But yeah, I've never really like thought of a term. I've always said, oh, it's just like pop culture, like what people would expect when they imagine it. Like, right, when people imagine, for example, Greek, they imagine like pop culture movies, Gladiator. They don't think like, what would the Romans look like from historical books? That's not the first image that comes, at least not for a majority audience. Maybe for a few people that are enthusiastic.
Like it's like the reason I think of it as gacha, because in gacha games generally, like you think of like your MiHoYo games, your Genshin Impacts, your Express thing, Space Train, whatever it's called.
Honkai Star Rail.
Honkai Star Rail, yeah. Like the way that character design is approached there is that they don't really change the bodies of the characters very much. What they change is the costume design. So the costume design is supposed to pop. The costume design is supposed to attach. Supposed to create the relationship with the audience, right? Like, so those characters are very much like kind of clothing racks in terms of their bodies are just kind of clothing racks for the costume itself. And that creates a certain aesthetic design style, right? Like where the approach to fashion design.
I think people call it the Genshin style, right? Because it's just the most... like the bigger player at this point. Although I'm sure it's not like, I'm sure there's like a million other gacha games that do similar stuff.
Yeah, like, but it's a general sort of ethos and appeal in terms of like, how do we design costuming? Well, we design it to pop, like to look fancy, to look expensive. It's often inspired by the way that fashion is designed for like something like the Met Gala, like runway, like the very impractical high fashion stuff that's supposed to pop visually, but you're not really supposed to think of it as a world building tool. Like, why
like
are characters dressed
right?
the way they are in Genshin? It's like
an
that has nothing to do with.
Like, it's almost like
Genshin characters.
Sorry.
Yeah, Genshin characters are not dressed in a way that reflects their environment, right? Like, they're not dressed in, oh, this is a society that only has wool available, so they're all wearing woolen clothes. Like, no, they're dressed in a way like this is what's powerful and appealing and what pops on screen, right? And that, to turn back to the thing we're actually supposed to be talking about, this is sort of the same thing. We have this inspiration from like ancient Greek mythology and the muses and stuff like that, but we're not playing with like, oh, this is a sort of historically accurate toga. We're playing with, okay, what can we do with the shape language of a toga to make this character pop, right? Like to make this character stand out and be like exceptional looking.
Although
there's nothing wrong with that. Again,
I don't think that is a bad thing.
That's not a. Yeah, that's not a derogatory at all. Like,
because
like
then you get things like
effective.
These of like the nails and the scissors motif.
Yes, exactly.
And
like the pin cushion on the wrist.
The heels are not even attached. If you look closely, the heels are not even attached. The has the space for the needles, but then it just looks so cool in this design. And it's, I don't even have anything that I would do differently. It just, again, this is one of those designs just feels so unique by nature. That is, I think it's one of the jewels of the space, right?
Yeah, and like what I really like about this one is that it commits to a concept, right? We have this concept, okay, seamstress, sewing, needles, like all of this, and that's where the costume design comes back into it. Like, I like that the costume is like this elaborate posed stage kind of thing, because this character is a seamstress. This is a character who makes costumes, right? Like, who makes clothing. So of course she has a presentation where she has like this elaborate wild costume that's almost impossible to construct in real life, but she can do it because she's a fantasy seamstress. Like, I like the coherence of that, right? Like, that there is a part of the character that's sort of, that reflects back into, why does she dress like that? Well, because she's a costume designer, because she makes cool costumes, because she makes cool fabrics, right?
I feel like a lot of people, when they see like fantasy, they almost think it's like a catch-all term. It's like, oh, it's fantasy, you can do whatever you want. But I feel like for good fantasy, you gotta commit to an idea. So like, if you're, for example, you have like a cyberpunk gritty fantasy, and you just pull like a superpower out of nowhere, just like it breaks the fantasy, it breaks the almost the lie, right? And this is like this is when you do it good. Like, you have, of course, nothing on this design makes quote unquote sense, but it plays on its fantasies. And it plays on the character in a really unique and interesting way, right?
Yeah, like, that's a character I would recognize. Like, if you show me a lineup of like 100 VTubers, I would recognize that one. This isn't generic. That's another thing I quite like about it. Also the hair, as some people are pointing out in chat. Like, black hair is its own very specific thing, right? Like, it's a whole universe of nuance to dive into, the way that black hair works, the way that it's presented, like kinky hair, the way that non-straight hair of any kind, like hair that isn't like just flat and straight, works, is a difficult thing in terms of how you represent it visually, right?
Just European in general.
Yeah.
Which is what mostly we see in media. At least
and like
a few years ago.
90% of anime characters, right? Like, they have straight hair, ultimately. Like, they have hair that goes in all kinds of fucking weird directions and stuff, but it is always like the strand of the hair is long and straight and like smooth. And I like whenever people play with presenting, like taking the anime stylization but applying it to hair that isn't just that over and over again, which is something that this artist is doing here. And I think it works really well. I would be interested to learn whether or not there's any trouble with the way that like the software, because I know software applies physics to hair on VTubing models. I wonder if there's anything like there where the physics model for that doesn't work for black hair the same way that it does for straight hair, or kinky hair, right?
That would be a really amazing conversation to have with.
Yeah, like that seems like something to be interesting to talk to like a rigger about, like whether or not. I can
actually probably like give a few like calls. I have because my contact, I have a lot of contacts with like artists and people that make these live 2D models, so that could be like a really cool conversation to have. But that was Anarchy, right? Now we have
Anarchy.
Kinoko VTuber. She's a Brazilian VTuber. A cozy girl with a distinct silhouette, fairy tale character vibe. Each item has a reason. Gloves hold magic, mushy hat to camouflage in the woods, avoid predators, special boots to run fast, and the apron is a symbol of independence from adult gnomes. And here she is. This is Kinoko.
Yeah, that's an adorable character design.
This is the definition when it comes to me of like cottagecore. Like this is like every cottagecore girl's dreams. Like a little puffy like mushroom hair, the little like frills on the dress as well. But it's also not like
classic
unreal
European style like pastoral fantasy thing.
But it also doesn't feel like unreal. It's also like it's almost like too basic. It feels like practical of like somebody that, I don't know, like grabs shit from the woods and make like what like
really, like I wouldn't say too practical, but it's definitely like, again, going back to the sort of gacha design. When you look at gacha character design, a lot of the times it is overloaded with detail. Like there's as much detail, as much stuff happening in it as possible, because again, more stuff equals more like more wow factor. This design is quite reticent about like it's like this, as the description says, each item has a reason. Like there seems to be a consideration in this about like not overloading and only using such details as is necessary. And I like the simple like the color scheme here. I think is especially good, just from from the perspective of making the character recognizable. If you want to make a character really easily recognizable, simplifying is usually better. Like the simpler the character is, the more like that creates a greater potential becoming iconic.
It's also very hard to do it well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to do it. It's difficult. But like that's part of what I do with my little design here. Is like I very specifically went for a very simplified, like 2 colors. We've got black and white, and then we've got like the blue. That's it. That's all we're working with, because it makes me recognizable. Like this is a branding exercise in part that I look this way. And can be like, again, it depends on the kind of appeal you're going for, because like a lot of VTubers glory in maximalism. There is a sense of like more details, more stuff happening, as a thing that like is part of the joy of that self-representation. But the simplicity that's on display here, I really like, because I could see, okay, I could draw this character and make them recognizable with very few.
Oh, is the internet okay? Oh no!
And like,
sorry, the audio has cut a little bit. Oh
yeah, I see my model is frozen on stream.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I don't know when the hell
just like 5 seconds ago. 5 seconds ago.
Yeah, no, like I would find it very easy to draw fan art of this character because the design is so simple. It's so easy.
Yeah,
it's very recognizable. Like you got the mushroom hat, you got the pigtails, you've got the little dress. You've pretty much got it. Like it's a very easy character to draw fan art of, and that's, I think, also from a business perspective as a VTuber, that can also be a smart thing to do.
So you've said about how your own character, for example, how it's like very simplistic to be recognizable. My approach was similar, but like in a different direction. So when I started like I'm making my channel, I started like doing voice acting stuff, and I started doing ASMR, and I had like over 100 characters of like different like people that I've commissioned and different styles and different artworks, and I felt like that was kind of clashing, because it felt like a lot of people knew me but also didn't knew me. So in this design, in the first iteration, this is the second iteration, but I've managed to make, I wanted to make someone with a recognizable face and hair, and you could change pretty much any clothing and it would still be like, oh, it's still this guy, because it would fit that need. So like it goes a lot, again, it goes, because VTubing is such a broad space. You have people that are just artists, like 2D artists. There's people that make videos, there's people that stream, there's a lot of people that stream. But there's people that just, for example, make like video essays and they just have like 5 different frames of their artworks. There's people, for example, like you, do go for a much more simplistic style, but in a way that is memorable, in a way that is like the most basic design features needed to convey a message that I think becomes memorable, becomes, again, you can remember, you can probably go from memory and get pretty close to the idea, which again, there's value in all these things. It's just, where direction do you choose to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, like, in terms of this is general character design advice, is when you start making a character, you should know what it is that you're trying to do there. Because, like, it is completely cool to go for the maximalism, to go for the, like, I have the coolest costume in the whole world with all of the details and all of the things on, but you have to know that that's what you're doing, and you have to do it on purpose.
Yeah, all the bells and whistles, like going for like a really expensive high render, you know what I mean? Which I think is like a lot of artists do that because they want to flex their skills, right? I've seen a lot of talented artists.
It's fun. Like it's also just fun to do. But it is a thing of like it affects how people perceive your character, right? Like it affects how people will read who your character is and what their character design is like and what their person is like. There is a VTuber, can't remember what her name is. I think she's called Monarch, something like that. She's like a queen character design with like a blue Monarch, color scheme primarily. And like that character design is very specifically about, like, seems to be designed specifically to support her personality as like, I am like the queen mommy of my stream. Like she has this very regal presence, and that maximalism
again plays a role in the fantasy, right? I use the word fantasy very broadly, but the idea for this thing, right?
Yeah, it's like the expensiveness of having this maximalist character design approach. It helps the fantasy of who the character is. Whereas, because this is supposed to be a little forest gnome sort of thing, right? The simplicity helps with that. It makes it more pastoral.
Like a super fancy dress with like golden ornaments and like high heels, it would be a different fantasy. But I don't think it would be what they're going for. Which is like something more
certainly
whimsical.
Wouldn't support the idea of like, this is a little gnome that lives in the woods and hides under mushrooms, right? Like if the character design was too complex, it would look too expensive. It would look too much like this is a person who lives in a castle in the big city, right? So there's that level of concern. And a good test for a character design is when you're drawing it, like you come up with your design, then test for yourself, how many things can I take away from this design before it becomes unrecognizable, before I can't recognize it as my specific character anymore. And with anime characters, this is one of the weaknesses of anime stylistically, especially moe style anime.
Same face syndrome.
Yeah,
right?
Same face syndrome is like the moment you take away the hair and the costuming, the character could be any of 100 million characters, right? Again, that's the Genshin thing. And that's where... But the advantage of that is because the style is so simplistic, you don't need to add very much to the face. You don't need to do very much for the morphology of the body, for the shape of the body, before your character becomes incredibly recognizable, right? Like you really don't need to do more than a beauty mark or a slightly different nose or slightly different lips. I think Princess Jellyfish is an anime that really demonstrates what you can do with very simple changes to character design. Especially like on femme characters, very well. So if you're looking for a way to, I want to make a VTuber with a unique, interesting design, conduct that test with your character design as you're coming up with it. Like, how many things can I remove from it and still have it recognizable as my own character? And then once you have dug down to like the bedrock of like, this is the recognizable feature, this is the thing that makes my character recognizable as my character, then add things on top of that. Like then you can add all the other stuff that you want, that's cool, that's interesting. But if you have that recognizable core, then you have a very versatile character that, like as you were talking about, that you can put them in a million different cool outfits and they will still be themselves, right? Like that gives you a lot more options.
It is also like, what do you want to do? Again, because I think VTubing is, of course, there's people that make money and there's like a commerciality to it, especially if people are making like looking to make a professional product, right? You gotta have certain things that you're gonna do. But I think because this is also like a really independent space, it becomes detached from these needs. So for example, a lot of people, again, will go for like ease of like fan arts is a thing. It's actually something that the new design that I'm planning is going to address, because people have said this hair is way too difficult to draw, so we're simplifying the shapes.
It is a pretty complex structure. You could simplify it down to like a few.
Exactly.
And that, like, again, that's the thing, again, anime
you could
style.
Also, like, you could also make it, for example,
a really good thing to simplify.
Like really high. For example, like if you're if you're an artist, there's a lot of artists that make like these over the top crazy models of like a million different renders that if you zoom in like 300%, you still have like over like 4,000 pixels from like how detailed these like VTubers get. Completely unusable for like a stream, for example. It's completely unusable, but it's just like
but it's a little technical showcase.
Exactly, right? it's about like purpose. I think it's a lot about purpose. And again, these characters, at least these first few, have been like beautiful designs that are just like, you can see the purpose, you can see the ideas, and you can see the intent, which I think is like, it's the pitfall that a lot of people, including myself included, when I was like making these like generic characters to fit like fantasy roles for like a single one-shot video. It's just, we fall for these like pitfalls of what either people are already doing or what people expect you to do. And that's when we miss really
tropes
interesting
and
ideas.
like the conventions that are available in the space. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, again, using tropes, using conventions, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a bad thing to do. The difference is intentionality. Like, when you use a trope, use it because you want what it says, you want what it does, you want the associations with it, you want people to understand you in the context of the tropes that you are using. Because when you do it with intent, you always get better design. Like, the thing that tends to lead to bad design in my opinion is when well, my VTuber is a hot anime girl because that's all VTubers are, all hot anime girls, so I'm not going to think about that, I'm not going to question it, I'm just going to go with because that's what's there, right? Or my character has,
that's why
like,
the whole like, why do you think there's so many like pink hair cat girls, right? It's just because that's what people used to do. And then I think that's changed. I think that has changed a lot of people. I think people are being a lot more like free in their designs, but there's still a lot of pitfalls. And it just feels it. I don't mean to like be mean. I feel like we can do a lot more. And when we see sometimes as creators, like I myself again, we don't think about it. It just kind of happens. Yeah. So these kinds of conversations, it's good to like always like put it into perspective, right?
Yeah, and it's also completely fine when you're designing a character for the first time. Just like, don't think about it. Just go with whatever feels right. But eventually, like, if you want the character to be something that really represents you, that really shows you as the character you want to be, you do have to have that conversation of like, kill your darlings, right? Like, this cool thing that's really, really cool. Do I need it? Is this a thing that expresses who I am, what I want to be? Can I take it away? If I take it away, does that actually kill the character, or does it maybe give space for me to do something else? Like, it's a process of, like, I hate citing Coco Chanel because she was a fucking Nazi sympathizer, but it is that Coco Chanel thing of like, before you leave in the morning, like, take off one thing, right? Take off one accessory. It isn't bad design advice, because it helps you dig down to the few bits that are important, like the few bits that really matter to who your character is.
The next one is Red Autumn Owl. She is a combo of my favorite things since I love witchy things. A lot of mushroom themed OCs, D&D characters. Elves are cool, being a fall themed elven mushroom, which also made sense. I also wanted her to look like me. To tie the red and owl parts of my name for fun, I have the red leafy twigs that are constantly in my hair, and one that is carved owl at the end. Like,
okay, let's have a look at this.
I mean, let me zoom in to like see closer. Again, very, very cottagecore. I feel like when we go, it's like very cottagecore. Which again, you know, it's a witchy. You know, it makes sense to like a cozy kind of streamer witchy go.
Yeah, and like, again, that's the thing about like vibe. Like, when you see that character,
the leaves as well.
Yeah, you get the vibe immediately, right? Like, there's no ambiguity here about what the vibe of the character is. And that's a strength, right? Like, exactly. That's another thing that's like generally in VTubing is like, characters will wear themselves on their sleeves. Like, you see a character and you kind of see, okay, this is the thing that's going on, because we're playing with tropes, right?
It's like, I think it like both ways would be like, like a mistake. I think going too hard on both ways would be a mistake. Like, you don't want it to be too default, too like generic almost, because it just doesn't feel like you're like putting any thought into it. But you also don't have to do the most like out there idea and really go out. Like, for example, like if you were to think of like autumn, you can think of like about the dying, right? The dying for a new beginning, for example. So you can have like a lot of different like fantasy things on your body, like almost like to incorporate that nature of like the circle of like a new beginning almost. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to really go extra. If you have a witchy girl that is like super cottagecore and cozy, and it's like the autumn leaves and the vibes, that also works. You gotta know your vision and play your strengths, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but because
like,
like
certainly,
because here when you have it, like, of course you don't have it like, again, if you take out the witchy hat and the full motif, you just have a girl in a dress almost. But it's the
like,
little
that's
details. It's the vibe. It's the vibe, right? That I think, like,
yeah, I mean, that's a critique that you could level against the design, is like that thing of like how many things can you take away before the like the nature of the thing disappears. And this is definitely like a accessory reliant character. This is a character like the mushrooms, the leaves, the witch hat, the costuming, that's doing a lot of constructing the vibe of the character. And if I were critiquing it, like, I would go, okay, what can you do with this character to add that can't be taken away if you remove the costume, right? Like, that could be, if this character dressed in a completely different costume, would they still carry the same vibe? Because, like, definitely between the two forms here, like the one with the witch hat, the one that's in like the cable knit sweater with the thing.
Although, to be fair, aside from the accessories
are doing the heavy lifting of that.
There's not much else aside from the accessories. The clothes are actually quite tame. So I think, like,
yeah, so like that would be the place that I would add something. Like I would like, as you said, like if the idea is to represent autumn, can you do that in a way that's presented like on the body of the character themselves? Or alternatively, is there something you can add to the face, a little detail, a little like a mole, freckles, like anything that's sort of that heightens the importance of the character's body to their character design. Again, not necessarily a critique to say that this design doesn't work. It does work. We got the vibe immediately. Just if you wanted to build on that, you could add a few more things in that space. I might also look into getting like, if we're doing with a cottage core sort of witch mushroom theme thing, I think a mushroom print on some of her clothes
the design,
would be
right? The
really
clothes are
nice
very flat.
design addition.
Yeah,
the clothes are sort of relatively monocolored. I think there's a space there you could add something onto it if you wanted to. Again, not that you have to. I do want to stress, like, the design of this thing works on the face of it. You get the vibe immediately once you see it. Like, a cable knit sweater is a fantastic costume piece to say, we're doing cozy vibes right now.
Again,
we're doing
not
soft, we're doing sweet.
None of this is a critique. This is just our vision, our eyes on a different point of vision. It is a critique,
but it's not like a criticism of like, oh, this is bad and it doesn't work. A critique is, and this is something I've been trying to emphasize more and more in my content, is like, you can have a critique of something that's non-destructive, right? Like, that's not,
because like I think this is also, I think this is also like,
here's what I see and here's what could be added to it, right?
Yeah, it's just because I think this is what this is, at least, is like targeting, from my own understanding, right? Because I think my audience is like 90% women, so I think this is targeting a very like kind of audience, because there's a very solid audience that is like the cozy gamer girl that is like plays Stardew Valley and like brews a cup of tea and takes it, and she goes and watches her stream, and this is who she's greeted with, just this visual fantasy of herself. So I think, again, there's, of course, this is like a very, like, when it comes to character design, yes, that like the how many things can you remove is a thing, but again, it's not like a necessity, like you said, right? You can do whatever you want. Nobody's stopping you from just going.
That's the other thing, is like, this is,
have fun.
Anyone whose design is submitted here, you can do whatever the fuck you want. You don't have to give a shit what I think about.
This is just like a different POV. This is just because, again, I feel like as like creators, not even just artists, as creators, when we go like 1, 2, 5, 10 years, we get stuck in our little head. Like, we just can't get out of this box. So like that's the conversation that I wanted to have. I wanted to have like something that we could just get a different point of view from somebody that has experience on this. Because if anything, you just get a confirmation of like, yeah, design works. Well, what could you do? What if you wanted to take a risk? Because I feel like, for example, I'm gonna use Genshin because this is just the most fresh example that I have in my mind. Genshin they've recently leaked a new character. Her name is Varessa, and she's supposed to be
plus. I'm gonna go off on this. Shut up. I'm talking
she's
now.
Supposed to be chubby.
That fucking character. Became the Joker I became the Joker when I saw that fucking character design. Like, oh, she eats a foot-long sandwich. She sits on enemies as like her attack.
She's
That's a
cow.
stick. That's
She's
a stick.
cow.
She's nothing.
She has like marginally. Oh my god, we're both going on.
She's a stick. It's so. Oh god.
You gotta
and
put
this is the
side
thing,
by
like,
side to see like a mild difference in her thighs, and that is
it's so.
How is that?
Oh,
chubby?
fuck me running. It's like you cannot like if you love bigger bodies, then love them. Like it can't be this thing of like,
it's not even
I have
hear me
1%
out.
body
People
fat.
love
fat.
those fake girls. Just like, and I even said this. I even said
that
this on a
character
video
makes me the Joker.
because Genshin has a very unique style. We get that. Genshin is appealing. Genshin knows how to make gacha games, but they have taken, like, if this was a new game, I would understand. Like, hey, new games don't want to take risks once they got the ball going. But how many years has it been that Genshin has been
Genshin
around?
Impact
Take
makes
some
untold
risks.
billions of dollars. They
character.
like that's another thing that's.
It would
that's
have
the
been
thing
so
about,
perfect.
like,
She's a cow motif. If she was a little bit chubby, and yeah, she's like also very loony, like Looney Tunes in her animation. She's like very stretchy. So if she just was a bit chubbier, just like a little bit, just like it doesn't have to be like because the bad faith criticism is like, oh, you want every character to be fat and ugly and hideous. No.
Yeah.
but
You've
just
read
like
my
a
comments on my
mild
YouTube channel.
body
Yes.
difference, like mildly, just like a little bit, one time. I'm sorry for going off on this.
Like, and there is in game design, it is a thing of like Genshin Impact. A big part of the reason why the characters only have 4 fucking body types is because the entire game is built for body types. Exclusive, like all of the ladders, all of the interactable objects, all of the costume pieces, all of the everything. Like everything is built around those 4 bodies. There is a game design
for that,
problem,
but like not really,
body
right?
Diversity.
They haven't again.
But
if
MiHoYo has had 10 years.
They've had 10
years.
and
They
how
have
many
had so
billions
much
of
time.
dollars, right?
Like it is not a problem of resources with MiHoYo anymore. It just isn't. Like
They don't want it.
Baldur's
They
Gate,
just
for
don't
example,
want it.
has a problem with its body diversity because every single character has more or less the same, like, slim, fit, relatively muscular body. There's very little body diversity in Baldur's Gate 3. It's a weakness of the game, but it's a thing of like the amount of resources it would take to create, like, because every character can wear every piece of armor. All like 2,000 pieces of armor has to be to every single damn character if you want to have like body types. Yes, I understand why Larian doesn't have the resources to do that for Baldur's Gate 3. But like, if MiHoYo wanted to do if they do a chubby, even a character who just wasn't like fucking anorexic, they could. That's a thing that's available to them. Fucking MiHoYo. God, I need to make a video about that at some point. Anyway, back to the actual character we're talking about.
That was the thing that I went on a rant like 2 days ago. Because they were calling, dude, I saw people, again, I'm very sorry for going on this tangent on Autumn's design, but I saw when I saw the third tweet saying, wow, body representation on Genshin, I was like, am I going insane? Am I tweaking?
The Joker. The absolute Joker. No, that's not. Oh, hateful. It's a hateful thing to do.
Stop that rant because I'm getting upset. And that is not
it is so
today.
It's like, do you think we're stupid, MiHoYo? Like, do you think we're fucking morons? Honestly. Anyway, back to the good characters we're actually looking at right now.
It's just like if she ever wants to like try something new, I think having this conversation of like, why not try something fantasy like with her hair? Maybe vines growing on the arms, like anything.
Like there is definitely stuff that could be done with the
you
hair
can
here,
do
like
a lot
in terms of.
If you want to try something,
it's a matter
new.
of like. It's also like this is clearly very much a self-representation. Like it's a combo of my favorite things since I love witchy things. Like this is very much.
This is meant to be. I cut this out because of the space, but this is meant to. A lot of these VTubers, the Greek girl, this one as well. They're meant to be like also inspired by their in real life selves. So
yeah, exactly. So like it's also a thing of like. Maybe a lot of the details of this character might be just like, well, that's what I look like in real life, so I want to keep that. And that's like, so obviously don't change that just because we're saying stuff. But it is a thing of like, you could try something with the hairstyle. Like, again, maybe for a witch character, braid a few leaves into the hair. Or,
I mean,
like,
witches are very like nature, right? I think like in real life, witches are supposed to be like kind of like almost like an alchemist, where they use a lot of like the plants and the nature to like do medications, for example, right? And a lot of this different stuff. So that could be like something you
gardening
go for.
And things like that.
Gardening would be like perfect for this girl. Like not even like just
like,
straight up like
there's already
hardcore gardening, but
leaves,
just like cozy
right?
gardening, like a little spatula with like some cute like design accessories. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like there are little things you could do with like leaf designs and stuff, like braid it into the hair, like things like that. That would sort of push the vibe a little bit more if that's something you wanted to do. This is my personal thing. The face on this character is a very standard anime girl face, right? Like, and again, there's nothing wrong with that.
It's just the style.
Given that this is a self-representation, like it might be worth looking into. Can you bring more of your own facial features into this character? Like, because that would add some uniqueness, and again, it would allow the character to
like
be more
nose.
consistent across different costumes, right?
Like a nose.
Noses, especially. Like anime character design. This is another thing. Anime character design. Anime girls don't have noses. Like noses just
My
don't
brother in
exist in a lot
Christ,
of
you are
anime
opening
character
a
designs.
can of worms on my stream. Do you know why? I've made two videos. I've just taken a bunch of my VTuber friends, and I've said that because people are making fun of my nose being a little bit stiff because of the rig is just kind of how the design goes. And I was like, at least I have a nose. So we went on like a 2-month tirade of just like putting noses on VTubers and fixing this design. Fixed. That was so silly.
Yeah, but it's
people
like
still ask me for a part 3, and I'm like, I don't know how much I can keep doing this while people start to hate me.
Yeah, I mean, but
But you know,
noses are
unironically, it like
like
you can do a lot with like to not really break the anime style, but just like there's like, for example, manhwa has like a very unique style as well, and I've yet to see like someone really like take inspiration from that for a VTuber, right?
Yeah, but
There's
also
like a
you
lot
can
of
just
it you
look
can
back into like before the rise of the moe blob, right? Like the rise of the moe anime girl character design, which is like the default. Now, before that, like if you look back to the 90s and the 80s, there was a lot more facial diversity in the beautiful, gorgeous women characters in anime, including noses. But because noses don't exist in anime character design so often, it also means that if you any
My chat is yelling at us to not talk about the nose. My chat is yelling at us.
But like any nose that's even a little bit unique in any anime character design, instantly that character becomes a million times more recognizable because they stand out, because it makes them so different from everything else that exists.
Exactly.
So like if you wanted the character to be very unique, especially if you're working in an anime style, give them a nose. Just any nose that's like visible on the face and isn't just a little
dot.
like a little
like 3
dot on their
pixels
head.
I've seen. The lowest I've seen was 5 pixels. Just 5 pixels. Not lines. 5 pixels. That was the lowest I've seen. Anyway.
Yeah, like plenty of times like a nose is just rendered as literally a
Speaking
dot
of completely
on the character.
different style, completely going on a
Oh
side
yeah,
tangent.
now
This is-
shit gets horny. Okay.
Now this is very horny. This person is. This is Lulipop. She is again another friend of mine. She's a clubber Arctic hair that decided to go for stream for fun and found a new passion for it. My goal is to vibrant colors to show like how energetic she is. I think she's also like supposed to be like rave, like those like.
Yeah,
clubs.
this is definitely rave styled. A little bit of like the old scene kid thing is in there actually as well.
Reflex of a vibrant personality too. The choice was a lot of things I found sexy and appealing mixed together. With the furry design. That's not. It's furry as fuck.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean,
Not
furry is
shaming-
like
I blame
part
Disney.
of the
I
reason
blame
why
Disney for
VTubing
the
even
rise of
exists is
furries ever, but like it's a thing now. So you know, VTuber furries
yeah,
are
like
a thing.
I saw. There's a furry who works a lot in VR chat, which I think is like a VR chat as a space is very heavily connected to VTubing in my opinion.
Yes.
But they've been working on a mod to make like sign language possible within VTubing.
Oh, that's
and within
awesome.
VR chat. And it was some of the tight. That's the coolest use of technology I've ever seen in my fucking
I've seen
life.
a lot of
To
really
be,
cool
like,
stuff
'cause,
with
like,
VTubing. It's just so amazing
'cause,
how
like-
people. It's also kind of wild. I've seen like ones where they do like brain like nodes to like connect to their ears so they can control their ears using their brain. I am not joking. It's genuinely amazing what people do with these like technologies. Again, VTubing is such a wild space. That's why I love talking about it. I sound like such a nerd, but I really do. I really do love
It is
talking
cool.
about
like
this.
it is very, very cool. Like there's an extent to which like VTubing and like the extreme lengths that people go to with technology in order to alter their self-representation, that shit is cyberpunk. Right? Like
Yes.
that's the transhumanist cyberpunk future that we want.
I mean, there's
right?
a genuine, non-ironic argument that people make about transhumanism in VR chat. Like, given
Yeah.
Taking away every restriction, taking away like it also is very funny because a lot of like people's first designs is also like very like RGB as fuck and like super like color vomit, you know, because again it's just like when people like first get that freedom of like what would you want to be. Like I've seen people get gender dysphoria non-ironically because they play with like a female like avatar and they see themselves acting, moving, the hands, the face as they are, and they just like can't almost get a shock.
Powerful.
It's genuinely,
it's
like
powerful.
It seems like we're exaggerating, but it's just genuinely insane. The world that we live right now, right? It's truly amazing.
Yeah, like it would be lovely if capitalism wasn't trying to ruin it all and monetize it away from us. But
you are not baiting me into having a 1 hour discussion over why capitalism fucking sucks. I will do it.
It doesn't take an hour. You can sum it up in 10 seconds, which is that we live in a finite world.
No, I love talking shit about capitalism, dude. I love it. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. It's the one rule that I have on my stream for myself.
Oh, don't feel guilty about it. That's a virtue. That's a virtuous pleasure.
Oh, dude.
It's like we live in a finite world. Infinite growth is not possible. Attempting to pursue it is going to destroy us all. There we go. Capitalism is bad.
I was gonna make a video. Oh my god, I'm going on a tangent again. I'm so sorry, but I just cannot help myself. I was going to make a video talking about, because I've watched a beautiful animation. I'm not sure if you've seen it, called Wolfwalkers.
I know someone who worked on that movie.
That animation was genuinely one of the most beautiful 2D animations that I've seen in a long time. And it's being held hostage because it's just stuck in Apple TV and nobody fucking has Apple TV. And I was gonna make a video that was completely rambling, talking about how like not only like animation is taken, I think like animation in like the past sense, where it was in the Cartoon Networks of the thing in Disney, kind of taken a big hit. Because when was the last time that Disney have made a 2D animation main feature film? I could not remember.
Yeah, no,
but
the last one they did, I think, was it Home on the Range, or was it
have been in amazing levels of animation. Wolfwalker was genuinely like, it felt like I was watching a Disney movie. It gave me that same sense of wonder and the beautiful, like you can see in the animation the sketches, like the pencil sketches. They kept that in the render. It's
they kept a little bit of the Xerox look. You know, this like animation. The reason why that pencil sketch look exists is because in the 60s and 70s, Xerox, like the print making company, the fax making company, came out with devices that like enabled to take just sketchy line art, like when they're drawing with their pencils, that wasn't clean up with ink, and were able to use that.
Oh, I'm very sorry. The internet is again.
Movies. In the 60s and 70s, like I think of like 101 Dalmatians is a very good example of that. And Secret of the Kells and like everything that studio puts out, like Wolfwalkers and stuff. That stuff is like evoking some of that old style, like that old scratchy animation style where you sort of revel in, because it's the Brian Eno quote, right? Like all of the flaws of an old format will become treasured as signifiers of like
style,
nostalgia when we move on, right? Like, so with the rise of 3D animation, the reason why those movies look the way that they do partly is as a reaction against the beautification that comes with like modern production techniques in 3D animation, showing the hand of the artist, like being able to see the scratchiness of that hand-drawn animation, that adds something. It adds a certain sense of soul, right? Like that 3D animation just kind of can't. Anyway, there's a character design on screen you're supposed to be talking about.
But it's genuinely like amazing. Like I think the technology, right? Because I think this is not unrelated to like VR chat VTubers, because this technology allowed like to do a lot of stuff. Like it is genuinely amazing. And again, I like the breaking the molds, right? Because again, it's I suppose that if you're a furry, you'd be like, what do you mean breaking molds? This just looks like every other furry. But I think it's not like, it's, if you're outside of that bubble, it just feels very fresh, at least in this space, which is very anime dominated, right? Seeing somebody take inspiration from a completely different style, which is furry
poised
style.
For a furry takeover. Like I think more VTubers should explore furry styles and furry character designs, because there's a lot of space there to work with. This specific character in particular, like as an expression of like the person, like it's a clubber Arctic hair that decided to stream for fun, vibrant colors to show how energetic she is visually. On a baseline, yeah, that works. Like this definitely looks like the design of someone who's at a rave, right? Like because we're working with the bright neon colors, we're working with like the heavy contrast of like pure black, pure white, and
especially
then,
against like such a white character, like the being like intentionally
colors.
an Arctic hair. Like if you were to like put it in like pastel clothing, it would be like it wouldn't pop out as much as this like neon clothes.
Yeah, the high contrast is a big part of like the expression here. The one thing I would say is I think like it's again that thing like if you want to experiment with the color scheme for this character, maybe take one of the neon colors away and see if like a mono colored design schema works, or try something with the hair. Like the hair I think is the one place where you have like these soft gradients and like this relative like this low contrast aspect of the character design. I think it clashes maybe a little bit with the extreme high contrast that's going on in the rest of it. So again, if you wanted to explore something more about the character, you might want to try doing a more stark hairstyle, like pure white hair with color streaks, or pure
the
black.
J's.
Could
yeah,
do
she has like just
there.
straight up like Nikes, right? Straight up like Nikes.
Oh yeah, like it's even got the swoop on it. Well, careful not to get sued for that one.
I mean, at least it's not Nintendo. I think she should be safe.
Yeah, no, but like these companies can actually go after people for shit like that.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up. I do like the asymmetry that's being played with here. Like I like the asymmetry.
There's
I
a lot
like the
of
fishnets
asymmetry.
on the one leg and like the long socks
I think
on
this
the
is
other.
like
like
a sock that is like ripped, I think. The image is like
probably
a little bit hard, and it's also very ravey. I know that's the first thought. You like in a vacuum, you'll be like, "Oh, why is this character sexualized?" But like, have you gone to a rave? I'm genuine question.
Yeah, no, like that's
this
part
is
of it.
what
Like,
people like wear at raves. It's like very because like
rave.
raves
like,
are very raves. I've gone to once and I hate it. I'm not a rave kind of guy.
Oh yeah,
but I've gone
not
to
my
once.
space either. But they are very erotic spaces.
It's
like,
not only erotic.
not in this.
It's hot. It feels. It's like a sauna. So like when you see people like wearing like nothing but shorts, sometimes topless, it's just because of how hot it is. So again, if she's supposed to be a rave like character, that's where she would be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's also a sensual subculture. Like raving is a sensual not in the sense of like everyone who goes there is because they're horny and they want to fuck, but in the sense of it's a physical experience. It's about like the pounding of the music and everyone being there, everyone moving together, like having feelings, indulging in sensation. And like so having an eroticized or sexualized character design, that
sexuality is not
completely.
evil, right? It's stupid when it's out
that's
of
the other thing.
out of context.
Puritanism sucks. Like people who sort of go, oh, if it's horny, that I really.
I mean, I'm an advocate for
anti-gooning
gender
bullshit.
equality, right? What if women can have like big old titties on the stream and get views? I'm here for being the gender equality, right? I'll have huge.
It feels like every year and a half there is that discourse on Twitch like, oh, girls who get views just because they have their tits out. It's like, yes.
I think I think it's like every generation of like kids maturing, and then they realize, oh, it's just whatever, and then they stop, and then a new generation of kids grows up and they're like, oh,
yeah, they have
titties.
to have the same discourse again. It's like, but like, oh, a girl is streaming on Twitch and she's being horny and sexy and she's getting views because of it. So the fuck what?
Again, just have
as long as it's not
harmful.
There is no problem. Fuck off.
As long as it's not like harmful, just like let people have fun. Just like whatever. Like if you want that kind of space, you can look it up. There's certainly places. Right?
There's definitely like titty streamers and stuff like that where there's a critique to be made about the way that they exploit parasocial relationships to get money out of the audience.
I mean, that's
absolutely.
a heavy
We can
thing
have
on
that
VTuber
discussion.
as well. This is the heavy
but
on
we
the
can't
VTuber
have a
space.
discussion about like, oh, it's bad that a
Because
lady is on
sexy.
stream and she has
it's bad
cleavage.
because sexy. Oh, it's bad because
like,
sexuality. That's just stupid. That's just genuine. Like, and again, I think
it's
it's like the
it's just
conversation gets
misogyny.
muddy.
Like it's just
Yeah,
it is
it's just,
misogyny,
at the end of the day, it's just misogyny. It's just misogyny. If you want to like sum it up, but I really do like it though. I think I also think because like furry has been kind of on the radar for so long. Like back in like I'm fuel this fuck, but back in like 2004, for example, if like furries were a very like fringe kind of thing. Like people didn't know what like personas was. Nowadays it's like a lot more mainstream, and I think because of that it's integrated a lot more into pop culture, for example, right?
Yeah, I mean, like the interesting thing about our subculture is that it's always a completely integral part of the internet. If nothing,
I mean, just think of how many people in STEM, right? Oh, the internet is
It's like there are so many furries, and I wouldn't believe it. But in terms of like maintaining the communities of art that are on the internet, like basically every working artist I know has at some point done commissions for furries, because they are some of the people who commission by far the most like artwork. They are a supporting pillar
also,
of
they
a
have
lot of fan communities.
suspicious amount of money. I do not pick fights with furries.
Well,
they have too
a lot
much
of them
money.
work in the tech sector, and a lot of them work in the defense industry.
That is
so
still
they have
too
a lot
much
of
money.
to throw
I've
around.
seen furries drop like 20 grand on artworks. That is too much money.
Yes.
I do not pick fights with people that have that much influence. I have nothing bad to say. Jokes aside, but you know, I just like the different designs. I like the variety. Like, I'm Brazilian, and Brazilian culture is a lot about miscegenation. Like, because of the way our country is, it's just a melting pot. You can find heritage of people that are the highest Japanese population is in Brazil. Most countries, second highest population is in Brazil. So we just have a lot of different cultures, and I like that mashups. I like that mashup of different things that we can just explore, and I think that carries over a lot into who I am, and I like that. I like that if you want to go for like a VTuber that's just straight up like a furry, that's cool. If you want to go anime, that's awesome. If you want to go old timey animation, cool. I've genuinely seen so many, like, I cannot list everything that I've seen that is just genuinely so inspired in this space, and I love that. That's genuinely fascinating to me.
Yeah, like it's a furry as an art style is a source of a lot of interesting artistic ideas that you can play with. Which, returning to the character design itself, this is furry that's verging on this, like, that leans very heavily into the anthropomorphic, right? Like, the character is primarily human with furry characteristics. And again, a thing that you can play with a character like that is, okay, are there more animal characteristics you can bring in to emphasize the character? Like, would the character, I don't know if they do hand tracking, for example, but would the character perhaps be interesting with like paw pads rather than humanized hands, right? Would the character be interesting if they had more of a snout and a little like rabbit nose? Would that make them cuter? For a lot of people, it would certainly make it sexier, right? That's something you could definitely play with a character like that.
Even if it's weird, it's just new. Like, not everything will work. Like, I've certainly had like ideas that just didn't really stick, or I just personally didn't even like. I have like plenty of artworks that I've commissioned that I just didn't like. I was trying something new and just kind of sucked. But I enjoy. I think for the most things that I've discovered that were unique, I'm happy to have taken those risks. And I think this is like something that as creators, again, we can all like always like learn to take a step back and like just, if anything, just hear a second voice that is not our own. You know what I mean? Just for fun, almost. You know? Yeah,
like it is helpful. Like, it's also, there's no such thing as a failed experiment. Like, when it comes to artwork, all there is like every single time you try something and it doesn't work, you learn. Like, that teaches you something. I also like don't
know if you noticed, but she's supposed to be like very muscular as well. Like, I know she's very feminine, of course. She has just look at these fucking hips, right? But she's also supposed to be like, the arms, the artwork is not like really showing, but she's supposed to have like abs and like defined arms and stuff. Even the legs are very like muscular. It's not like a how do I call it, like a default like chubby like thick-thighed girl. It's a very specific kind of like muscular woman. You know what I mean?
I think that could definitely be pushed harder in terms of, like, I don't know if this is like artwork or a 3D model that we're looking at. You could definitely push harder on that. If you wanted like that to be really, really apparent, you could push a little harder on that. That's where I would say things like, okay, does she need the thigh gap, for example? Because if you have someone who like trains their lower body and their thighs, and like, some people have thigh gaps, some people don't. It's relatively uncommon. If you want the character to be bulky, if you want the character to read as muscular, also it's often good to use more angular outlines for the character rather than rounded and soft. And that again depends on the appeal that you're going for. If you want the character specifically primarily to be sexy horny, then softness, roundness, like curves and stuff, that's generally better for that. But if you want the character to read more muscular, like something that is more polygonal, something that's a little sharper in its angles, will probably do a better job of making that come across. Because I didn't really read the character as like muscular, powerful in that sense on first look. Like that's like, I can see that the arms are definitely thick, but if that's the vibe that's being approached here, I think that needs to be pushed a little bit harder in order to really come through. But it's a good idea.
I mean, she has like she's a friend of mine, so she has like a bunch of different models, and I mean, you know, you can also something that is like cool about VTubing is you don't have to stick yourself to one idea. Like Iron Mouse is the one example. She also loves having the different models, and I know there's like expenses when it comes to like if you don't make everything yourself. A lot of expenses, holy god.
Yeah, because it's a lot of work.
But I think like the one of the things that is like cool about VTubing is you can have like a separate like version of your thing and just go in a completely different style, even if it's just like an artwork or a PNG or something of the sort. You don't have to stick yourself to one. Now this is more of a Gyaru design. This is Woraisha Vor. She is a peacock Gyaru, taking characteristics from Gyaru fashion details that make you see the AOC is not totally human but part peacock, representing many colors, which a person who is guided by her tastes without chimes. And here she is. I can zoom in a little bit. Here you go. I could not tell you about Gyaru fashion, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, no, it's a
really
Japanese
unique about the
subculture
peacock
fashion that's that's like very specifically about like often blonde hair, often tanned, tends towards like the sexualized, but also tends towards like streetwear, club culture, things like that. I'm not an expert on it either, but it's like a known.
It's a style. It's a style with precedence. It's a style with precedence. It's not like. It's not like out of nowhere, I would say. But I also don't. Yeah. I also like the birds motif. I think like in VTubing space, you see a lot of like bunnies, a lot of cats, a lot of dogs, even wolves sometimes.
Birds are underexplored.
Birds are definitely unexplored, and they're so weird. There's so many weird kinds of birds because like again, they're almost like dinosaurs.
Someone must make a secretary bird VTuber at some point. Like secretary birds, I feel like are so primed to make a really good cunty VTuber character design. like secretary birds at the very least. Like also a lot of seabirds. Like I believe there's a species of albatross that has like natural eyeliner in their feather markings. It's like there's a lot of design space there that people can play with their character designs. Anyway,
but finding the peacocks to be Gyarus. I mean, Gyaru is supposed to be like already very flashy, so just making that assumption to a peacock actually feels very natural. And again, I at least personally haven't seen any other like peacock VTubers. Actually, one of the mascots of my college university days was a peacock, but like I've never seen that in media, like a peacock character that I can think out of the top of my head.
There's one in Kung Fu Panda 2, I think.
Oh, the villain,
he's the
right?
Villain Shen. Yeah.
I guess
he's a fantastic.
Although he's not really
like
he's like more show off in the sense of grandiose, not really like outfit, right? For like fashion.
Yeah, like they use the tail very specifically with that character. To show that off. Yeah. But going back to the character we're looking at.
Also very colorful. Look at the color range of this. Like again, it's not that color like a lot of colors is a bad thing, but it's like how do you use this? And again, I think this is like because you see like blue, purple, red, blonde, like black, and you see like it works quite seamlessly for this motif, which is like I think like a lot harder to do to really like put a lot of color into it.
We're also looking at a fetish character, it should be said. This is a Vor character specifically, by the looks of it. So like that's like
I don't know much about it, so I always like I don't know I don't talk about what I don't know.
It is an erotic fascination with eating and being eaten.
I mean, I'm not going to criticize it. That makes you happy.
No, it's a more common kink that you would think. Honestly, it's weird on first blush, but like I've talked to people who
I'll be honest. Like, I don't criticize anything for being weird. I'm weird as fuck. Like it's just like different flavors of weird. As long as my goal is like as long as you're not hurting anybody else, and you're just doing yourself and you're happy and you know, Drew, that for me is like I'm perfectly fine. I don't care if you're a weeb, if you're like if you're like a FIFA guy, like super like default white guy, or you're like super out there, or you have like a super niche subculture like furries or whatever else. Like I just don't talk about it because I don't know. I genuinely don't know, and I don't feel like I don't like saying things that I'm not like confident in. right?
Yeah, like if a person isn't doing harm, then who cares?
And I've had good interactions. This is again somebody that I'm not sure if I can count myself friends. We've only talked a few times, but they're definitely like very friendly. So you know, but I do like I like the
maybe
bird
they're just trying
motif.
to get close to you so they can eat you. Who knows?
You just reminded me of that one video you've made. Somebody made. I think it was. I'm not sure if it was you. Or I'm trying to put this so it doesn't show off the ass. YouTube, please.
Oh yeah, no.
But I remember somebody talking about like a ice cream Pokemon and saying like the only thing that makes itself look like food is a parasite. So again, if this is a Vor character and it's looking to eat you, making itself disarming, appealing, would play on that fantasy in a kind of like almost like Gap Moe horror. I don't think this is Gap Moe, but like again, it would play into like almost like a horror sub image, right? Of being like,
yeah, like there's definitely
just come here. It's like a cute, like look at this cute Gyaru with like a bird motif. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a lot of War definitely does play on that. Like there's definitely a lot of it that plays on the whole of like presenting yourself as harmless and then, you know, eating. There's also a lot of overlap with giantess things. I don't know if that's what this particular creator is going for, but I just brought it up primarily because like the hypersexualization of the character is clearly part of the point. Like the character is clearly meant to be,
especially because this is like a new one. This is like a new character
concept
that is like very different from what I've seen from them. Again, I'm not like super close, but they've been like I kind of like know them from like the circles, right? Like I've seen them around. Yeah. We've talked a few times, you know.
Yeah.
And
like in terms of what they say, like the OC is not totally human, but part peacock. I think that could definitely be pushed more. Like in terms of like, there's little things you could probably add to the character to make them feel a little bit more like sort of a bird hybrid. Like little things like feathering on the skin, right?
Oh,
like,
you know what you could do? You know what you could do? You know, again, Gyaru like fashion is like very flashy as a nature. You could like make like clothing that is like lined with feathers in a way that is like boa. Almost like
she was wearing a feather boa, but then
like don't make it like
boa,
just like it's clothing, just like make it
on her shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like it's actual feathers coming from her body, but designed in the way that looks like clothing.
The other thing in terms of like if we're doing the thing of like a character who presents one way but they're hiding a secret nature, the very easy way to do that is to put the monstrous details on their back, right? Like so the front is very human, but then when you go around to the back of the character and like you go over the shoulders and stuff, you can see, oh, there's feathers there. It's like more of a bird-like ananatomy from the back. That's not
back
visible
also feels
from the
very
front.
empty.
That's a very good way to present.
If you would be so inclined as to look, the back also feels very empty. Like there's like a lot of the details is looking towards the front.
Yeah, so, I mean that's common for a VTuber, right?
It's
like
2D, right? I would expect. But again, if you want to take that step, you could definitely play around with that idea in the back because again, there's a lot of space you can build on top of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You could also, like, in terms of, given that it's a VTuber, and mostly VTubers aren't really shown that often, very far from the waist down, like, given that character bird legs rather than human legs, like, or having their leg end in, like, a clawed bird foot, something like that, you could definitely play with that if you wanted to make them more monstrous, right? Like, there's definitely things you could do there if you wanted to mess with it. I think in terms of having a critique of this at all, it's that you could definitely do more to incorporate, because the main bird feature that's there is the peacock tail. And that's, to be fair, that's the most important part of a peacock. That's the main thing about peacocks is the tail. But the other thing that peacocks also have is they have head crests and they have iridescent feathers. Like they have these feathers that are like very shiny in a very specific way. They reflect light in a very specific way.
I mean, I can pull it up if you want to. I can pull it up on the image if you want to.
Do you have a peacock?
No, it's just a good browser. I can be like peacock feathers. Here you go.
Yeah, and like peacocks, they're associated with blue, they're associated with green, right? And this person is clearly doing an intentional thing of not doing blue and green, right? Like they're doing a purple, pink, like sort of thing instead. and like you could definitely play with the head crest of a peacock. You could play with the face markings of a peacock, like because they do have these complex facial features thing, like with the white markings around the black eyeliner,
right?
and then
if you don't want to like make it super monstrous, because again, like VTuber is supposed to be appealing, you can do that with makeup.
You could definitely play with makeup to make it more peacocky, like to play with the face shaping
if you want to play
face shapes of a peacock.
If you don't want to make it too monstrous,
you could play with feathering a little bit more. Like I think they're doing a thing with feathering around around the chest with like the little features that are flapping down. I think those could look a little bit more like feathers.
Is this feathers? I think that was just. I thought that was just like leather.
Evoking it. It looks more like leaves.
Yeah, it almost looks like a plant. But I think
you could definitely do more. If you wanted, it's more plant-like. I think you could do more with feather imagery there if you wanted to really lean into it, because it's there in the hair, right? Like we have the hair that sort of transforms a little bit into feathers as we get down into the purple part of it. I think you could add more of that to more parts of the character design if you really wanted to mess around with it. And again, if you have a character who's based on a bird, maybe give them a sharp nose.
Super weird. Like birds are so weird. You can do so much with that. Which I think is cool. I mean, if you want to, of course.
Yeah, like, and again, the most important thing is that the character makes you happy. Like, that's the main thing. If the character achieves that, then it's good by definition.
This is just supposed to be like a second, like a different POV from your project. Again, if you want to, you know. And just like I personally think it's interesting. If I'm here just like shouting out people that have like really cool designs, I'm also happy with that. Here we have a different kind of take. This is a more simplistic, like, not simplistic. This is a more tamed approach. This is the busy lazy. A farmer in disguise, dark skin represents the earth and depth. The freckles, seeds, patterns, papers, and ropes have spiritual meaning. The animal-like features and the white hair are the dokebis. I'm sorry for that word.
Dokebis. Yeah, I think that's a Korean folklore creature.
Mahwas. Eyes in gold and Kim's meaning. I like that so like heavy nutrient soil is it's like very brownish. It's not like a brown in the like the brown. It's like almost like a black when it's like super rich in nutrients because of the leaves, right? The fallen leaves, they like decompose and it becomes like this very like dark soil that is like very nutrient for the plants. So again, this is like a very cool thing, and I can't see the freckles. Again, I'm sorry, this is like a chibi design, so it's like a little bit harder to see the.
They're there. I can see the little bright spots. But again, that would be a thing of like I really like the idea of the freckles representing like seeds and soil. I think go harder with that. Like if you look at people who are really, really freckled, like that, it's not just a few dots sort of over the bridge of the nose. It's all over the face.
All over the body, isn't it? Like, doesn't people have it on the shoulders as well? Like the little,
like freckles markings? Is all over your skin. Like freckles is just melanin expressing itself in your skin.
Animal-like features. I would push
the freckles.
What is the animal-like features? Just the cat ears. Also, is the hat supposed to be the plants?
And the tail?
I like the clothing. I like that the clothing has a lot of like. They didn't just
the color
like
scheme is very good. Like using the bright contrast of like having pure white and then like
especially because
black
it's a
and then
chibi. It's so hard to make a chibi design that is like recognizable because a lot of like chibi like it's just like big head, big eyes, and like a tiny body. So like making a chibi design that is like recognizable and like interesting is actually like very hard as well. I know it like the style is simpler and a lot of people lean because it's like it's just less to draw, but to make it recognizable, to make it unique it's very hard as well.
Yeah, like chibis, like because again, chibis are actually again that exercise of like if your chibi doesn't look recognizable, that's another reason why maybe you want to simplify your main character design, because if it can't be turned into a chibi, it's a lot harder to recognize. Like it's another good test of like, can I turn this character design into a chibi in a way that's still recognizable? Generally, that's a sign of a recognizable character design.
I do enjoy the glasses as well. It gives like kind of like a
the glasses are quite good. I quite like those.
It gives a relaxed nature. It looks like the kind of person that would like after like working on their garden or their like lawn would just like sit on the porch and just like read a book. That's the kind of impression that I get for this character.
given that they're also a farmer, I would look at footwear. Like again, for VTubing, feet rarely show up unless it's that kind of a stream, right? But I would look at like, given like what's the practical farmer footwear for the culture that this
especially if you want to make it like the half of the body.
Right? So like, what
like
does
they have like really like long like what is this like shorts? So like a unique like
like a hakama.
So just make it like just make it like
Japan.
boots, like straight up like boots, like just to step on soil and like get dirty. And you can even like I remember you talking about like this again. This happens a lot in like a lot of video games where everything is too clean. So if they're a farmer, just use dirt. Like they give them dirty boots.
Yeah, because they do have some of that. Like the tail has like the dirt patterning of like almost as though it's been like dragged through soil or something like that. I really like that. I would transfer some of that onto more of the design so that we get more of like this thing of like this person.
Again, that is something that I liked about your commentary. That's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to invite, because that's something when I first heard you talking about that, I think it was you were talking about the paint. It was like a demon skin line that had like graffiti. And you said like there's not a single drop
the street demons
of paint
skin line
in their things. And I was like, it just opened my eyes, because there's a lot of like stuff like that, like, oh, it's a scrappy technician, and then the things are just like super seamless, or it's a like a super messy painter and there's not a single speck of dirt. It's like a farmer and they're like pristine. If you like incorporate that of like, yes, this character like walks around the dirt. It dirties his hands. The sleeves of the robe that they're wearing could be like a little bit like dirty, just like they just didn't mind that
or torn. Damaged. It is a cultural thing. As I understand it, and I'm not an expert on this, there is a greater cultural taboo against being dirty, being unkempt. In I believe Chinese culture has like a bigger taboo against the Japanese culture as well. Like it has a certain different cultural valence. It has a connotation of a certain kind of rudeness and shabbiness that leads character designers to avoid it often, I think. Nonetheless, it is one of the things that's like a big lack in a lot of character
I can only
design
speak from
cultures
will always be like a culture will always be like a, you know, you can't, even if you know, you can't escape it. Right, so I can only speak from my point of view, but I actually like totally vouch for that. Recently, I was playing a game, a very horny game, Love and Deep Space. Right, they're pretty much like the gacha dating sim, but bent for women, and there's a lot of like people talking about it, but it's very hyped right now. And one of the characters, and specifically, I'm using this for an example. They're a Chinese game, right? So they're written to China and then they're translated, adapted. And he's supposed to be stoic. And my first impression of him was like, oh, he's so shy and antisocial. I didn't like the guy at all. Because again, you would talk to him and we'd be like, yes. And then just cut the conversation there. And the main character would keep talking to him. And I'm like, he keeps like shutting him down. Like, why do people like this guy? If somebody treated me like this, I would just say fuck it by the third attempt. But then somebody said to me like, hey, this game is actually Chinese. I think this was like an adaptation that didn't like kind of gave it a different impression, because he's supposed to be stoic. In China, being stoic is seen as a sign of like reliable, right? If you're stoic, if you're a strong man, you're stoic. You're like and get your things done. If you don't say too many things, if you're not loud, and I just again that was not my impression, because I'm just limited by my own point of reference and my own like experiences. So having somebody point that out in conversation
with Brazilians, but like generally you tend to be quite, at least when you show up in my comments, Brazilians tend to be quite loud and enthusiastic, right? And very social. So there is a cultural disconnect thing there as well.
And again, just having these conversations, I think, just puts a lot of perspective into it. I just find it interesting. I don't take it as like oh, I didn't get that at all, I didn't like it. I mean, like, wow, that's fascinating. I mean, how could you make that to make it more adaptable? Or like, how interesting. That's just how they interpret this kind of like behavior, right? This behavior is seen as like this. Or for example, like how Korean masculinity is a lot more feminine, for a lack of a better word. And that's just
androgynous, I think, would probably be
androgynous. I think it's androgynous, the word. Again, terminology is always something that I mention that I'm not good at. And I just find that fascinating. That's just, if you like, for example, they don't like beards and body hair, but that's just their masculinity. It's just how they express that. So I don't know the kind of culture that this is meaning to evoke, a lot of people, especially like, they tend to take from their own heritages, which I think is beautiful. I think is one of the best things you can do, is just take it from your own, because that's who you know best. But
yeah, like make an authentic
if that's like
vision of your vibe.
From my point of view, I think that's just like, if this is a farmer, just make it more unkept, just make it dirty, just make it like more soil, or give it boots that a farmer would wear, like heavier footwear.
I would like, again, it depends on what the character, like, because it's someone who's a farmer in disguise, right? Like, I would say the hands would be the place I would go.
So
like,
are they a
maybe
farmer
the rest
in disguise, or they disguising themselves as a farmer? That's, I feel like I'm not being stupid.
Well, either or, but certainly like someone who works with their hands, someone who's a farmer, someone who works the land, who's doing
because
hard physical
design-wise, I
labor.
think this is great. I think this is like genuinely beautiful.
Yeah,
the skin tone
I would
evoking
give them
the earth.
calloused hands.
Ooh.
I would give them calloused hands. I would give them like maybe like some nails that are broken on one hand, like things like that, maybe a little scar on the hand, just to signify this is someone who works the earth with their hands, right? Like, because that's one of those, like, how does your physicality reflect the life that you lead? That's a way to tell that story, right? Like, that this person is a farmer in disguise, right? Or if it's someone who's not a farmer, who's disguising themselves as a farmer, make them like sort of, I would make them a little bit dirty and stuff like that, but then, oh, their hands are perfectly manicured, their hands are perfectly clean and don't look like they've been working the earth. Then you're telling the story, this is someone who's pretending to be a farmer, but who isn't really, right? Like,
that
that's
is
a
also
place where I would
something.
go for that.
If you want to make them not a farmer, they're just trying to pretend to be a farmer. That is something that I think, like, if somebody made like a visual novel, for example, which I think is like the kind of where this like small details shine, because it was a 3D game, I don't think people would take notice. But just like in a visual novel, if you have that, and like somebody in test points out, his hands are too clean to be a farmer. This feels like it's something I would be like, oh, that is right, I didn't notice, right? But again, if they want to, again, this is just supposed to be a different POV. But I found that character specific to be like quite inspired, especially from how like not simplistic. What is the word? But like, it's
stylized, yeah.
It's supposed to be very stylized, which is, again, I find it so heavy to do, hard to do, because it's so hard to be like, it's so hard to say what is essential about your creations. Like, that is something I struggle a lot to be like, what is the thing that defines it? And to make a character like, I mean, this,
character
you gotta know
designers,
it
like
very
professional
well.
character designers, struggle with that. Like, that's a thing that's difficult for every artist, is to really dig down into the essential.
Speaking of simplicity as well, we have My Name Bin. Very simple design, just my first VTuber model a few years ago. I like cats, so that was a cute cat boy design with big cat-like eyes. Color I really like blue, and my character is blue themed. There you go.
Yeah, and it
Just
doesn't
like
have to be any more complicated than that. Like really, like, that's a good approach to design also, like, especially if you're starting out. If it's like, here's a couple of things I like, put them together, and you have a perfectly serviceable character design.
And not only that, you have
I wouldn't say
a
that
canvas,
this is,
right? If you're just starting out, make something that you like, and then that's your, like, the first, like, when people say, like, it's super cheesy to say this, right? The first step is the hardest. But like, when you first create something, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be there, because then it can be improved. You can be like, oh, I like this. Like, so you've made this. Now you can explore, like, what different styles would you want? What different clothes would you like to do? Would you like to make it more fantasy, more realistic, right?
Yeah, and the little cat, the sleeve with the cat design on it, that's perfect.
I think they, from what I've gathered from them, I've also like met them quite recently, but from what I've gathered them as well, this is supposed to be like kind of like exploring like more feminine signs of masculinity. There's a lot of like VTubers that have like male characters, but just a little bit more feminine. And I think that, again, that's also like something that is very valid to explore, right? Especially in this space where you can just do whatever you want.
Cat boys and femboys have a lot of overlap between those things, and it's a nice thing. Like, I generally speaking, masculinity is a prison, but only because like we are taught to imprison ourselves in it, right? Like, masculinity can be broad and wide and inclusive, and it can be a wonderful space to be in. It's just, you have to break out of the idea that it has to be only one thing, right? And I'm
just
very
something
happy
that
to
you
see
enjoy.
that
Like, for example, I enjoy going to the gym, right? I take a very traditional take to masculinity just because I enjoy it. I find it fun. I even make jokes about like being like with my partner being like, ha, I'm misogynistic, and you're like try saying like when she like, for example, she like completely like doing something nice for me, and I'll be like, as a woman should, just completely sassing out. But this kind of like more traditional masculinity, like being muscular, like bearded, right? It's perfectly valid with completely just going on the other side and be like more feminine as well. That is also perfectly fine to be like your expression of masculinity, right? And I think this is like very cool as well. To just be like
masculinity is a social construct. Like it's a thing we invented.
So that get new people around.
It's a set of roles we invented to play. It's not something that exists. Like there's no law of physics that defines that masculinity exists. There's no.
By the way, I'm just joking about the like misogynistic thing. I promise you, it's just like.
Yeah, no,
sassy.
I got that. I think,
I'm just making it clear because I know I have a lot of neurodivergent people in my community, and I don't. They were like, "Kindred, don't say that. People are gonna think." No, it's just I'm just joking. I'm just like, being sassy. But I like that. I think that's like very. I think that's like very unexplored. I think like people want to fit themselves into boxes because I guess it brings some comfort to fit yourself in a box, to be like, to find a trope that you like, to find the style that you like, or a type or a subculture, and just embrace that into yourself. But I also think that like doing your own unique take and like going for a more like feminine kind of masculinity, where he's never like, I know I find that stupid, and I've had this conversation with a few people that again have like different takes in masculinity, where they're like they wanna like, they see for example like a femboy or someone that like is a man but like dresses like more femme, and they're like, oh, you're just trans in denial, right?
Yeah, that really annoys me.
And I find I find that users of woke language
reinforcing gender essentialism.
Exactly.
Like,
you're just enforcing your own version of these binaries, right? Instead of just being like,
it really, like, I have a friend who's like not super traditionally masculine, and like there are people online who've been harassing them by saying, well, just come out as trans, we know, like, and it sticks in my craw, man. Like that. Don't fucking do that, because like, that's another thing that traps men into like this one restrictive vision of masculinity, is that anytime a man tries to step outside of it, instantly, oh, you're gay, oh, you're trans, oh, yeah, like,
you're
not,
woman.
like you get told
you're
not
a woman,
a real
you're
man
trans
thing. Yeah, it's like, that's gender essentialism. Don't do that. We're trying to get away from that. We're trying to make the thing so that gender is not essentialized, please.
And again,
no more of that, like, please. Femboys
somebody
aren't
said
trans,
this to me, and it really
girls
stuck.
Aren't femboys.
Somebody said this to me, and it really stuck. Like it's one of those words that people just drop casually, and it sticks with you for the rest of your life. You can choose. You can't choose. What is it? You can't choose who you are. You cannot choose who you are, but you can choose the labels that you put on yourself. Right? And that really stuck to me.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to conform.
They are all
you can, for example, I'm very I just very stereotypically just generic guy, but I also have like no qualms with my sexuality. I put in like fake nails and like shaved my legs for like, I have no issue with that. And which would, like, if this was my grandpa would be like, what are you, gay? What are you putting these like women nails on? Are you into men? Right? And that's. Yeah. I don't think that's like positive, or even going on the opposite end, just like for like a guy that is more feminine, even if it's just like a simple like stuff, and be like, just come out as trans, what are you, egg? I don't think that is like healthy. I don't think that's like positive, even if you.
No, I don't think it is either. I think it's a very unhealthy reinforcement.
Putting two people with ADHD on to talk about their interests.
Yeah, no, you go off and do this. But like, there isn't that much to say about that design, I don't think. It's simple, it's effective, it does exactly what it sets out to do. Like, clearly this isn't designed to be exceptional in any particular way, right?
If
like,
it's
this is
first design,
to be a cute cat boy from a very simple, and it succeeds in everything it wants to do, clearly.
Exactly. And if it's your first design, you don't have to do a lot in your first step. You just have to have a point to start. And now you can, what do you want to do next? Do you want to go more catboy, more fantasy? Do you want to be more cozy? Just straight up like anime. Just like generic slice of life anime, which is fine. It's perfectly enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
that's that freedom that I think you can only have if you take your first step. Again, the first step is always the hardest. It is cheesy to say this, but it is true. A lot of people, like, they overcomplicate things too much. They think like, oh, I gotta get this, like, for example, as an artist, they'll be like, oh, I gotta get like a super high expensive equipment, or I gotta like get like a streaming PC, like a really high setup, or I gotta get like a really fancy model. I didn't start with a VTuber. I just started as a faceless cam with 4 megabytes of internet, an i3, and just a lot of grime and sweat and tears. And one thing just led to another, and here we are, right? So taking that first step, I think it's scary as fuck, but it's also the most important one. On the topic, the Dante Will, another Brazilian streamer. My character is a half bat, half spider, guardian of the tree who links all the worlds with his doors, Yggdrasil inspired by the Nordic one. The design was made in a fusion of me and these two animals that I like. The color of my skin is my favorite, purple. There's a lot of VTubers that like purple. I've started to notice on the submissions. And the clothes are inspired by Devil May Cry. And here we are. They have like a lot of these VTubers have like gender bent versions. I just took the one, but this also has like a gender bent version as well. I think this is the original design. I think this is the original design though. So I've just taken this one. I've just taken the liberty. But
yeah, spider and bat is an interesting mix.
I also
think. Like,
something
that's
that first things come
mix
to my mind when I saw this is the monster features. A lot of like people are afraid of like putting monster features. The multiple arms are like fine, but the eyes, I've never seen like people just do, like they just have a bunch of eyes. I've never seen that, at least in like VTubing. The mouth, I believe, also like opens, and they have like a thing where this is supposed to be, again, it's very stylized, but the spiders have like things on their mouth that is not like teeth. It's like kind of like a little,
yeah.
So this is supposed to be the Calicera. This is Portuguese, so, but you know, and there's a lot of I think this should be like, again, very interesting designs where you go out of your shell a little bit and try for something new, which I think this is like very interesting as well. All right, what do you think?
Yeah, I quite like I quite like the idea of mixing a spider and a bat together in that way, because like that's, again, if you want a shortcut to a design that's interesting and stands out, mix two things that don't usually go together in some way. Like create a chimera of some kind, and like you will have a design that stands out instantly, basically automatically. Like that's a very good way to do it. I think like you said, yeah, like the monster features could be pushed more if that's what the person wants to do. Like having the pedipalps, having the little like the mobile mouth parts around the side could definitely be a thing to add, like some monstrousness.
Like
to
you said as well, like being simple also helps with fan art, which is like they're like more of like a professional streamer. So I think that this is like something that I think they've come into consideration, is like don't overcomplicate things to make it easy to do, like fan art, for example. They have a very large community, right? So
yeah, like, and that's definitely a valid concern there. I do like the clothes being inspired by Devil May Cry. I think is quite interesting. That my read on that would be that it's inspired by Devil May Cry 4, which is Nero. Would be my immediate read on the design of the clothes, because he has the hoodie thing going on. Dante's more leather coats.
Dante's a leather coat, yeah. He doesn't have a hoodie
and bare chest shit, yeah. So I think this is just inspired by Nero from.
Also,
Devil
I think
May
that
Cry,
like this is like something that a lot of people are kind of afraid to do. That just be like, I like Devil May Cry, so I've just taken a few things from Devil May Cry because I like Devil May Cry. Like I think like a lot of people are afraid to be labeled cringe for just being inspired by the things that they like.
Like cringe isn't
cringe culture. I think cringe culture is so fucking stupid. It's just
it's stupid, but it's also like.
So I think the internet has kind of given people that were lame the ability to be bullies, and I think cringe culture is the result of that. It's just a bunch of people that would have been have been bullied in school, just dishing out that pain back for anybody stepping out of the social norms.
Yeah, but it's also like cringe. What you have to understand about cringe is everything that makes you cringe is because it triggers something about yourself. Like everything you see in cringe that makes you go, I hate that. It's a reflection. Like cringe is 100% a construct of projection. you are projecting something onto other people, and it makes you feel a pain inside of you. And that's why it is the way that it is. Like, that's like cringe compilations and stuff on YouTube. Like, a lot of the time, it's just fat people existing and doing things.
Or
the
being
reason
like
people
angry.
cringe at it is because they all hate their bodies, and they're all scared. They're all scared of being labeled as overweight. They're all scared of it. Like, it's not anything that the person is doing. They're just fat people who exist and live in the world normally. But people cringe at it because they have this deep internalized body shame and hatred and fear of their own bodies. And that's what creates the cringe, like the reaction. And like 90% of cringe that happens in the world, it's projection. It's, if you cringe at something, look inside of yourself, find the thing that's reacting against it, and like maybe confront that a little bit in yourself.
Yeah, I think the things that need that social pressure is
better.
things that like are harmful. Like being like, oh, for example, like I have this like really awful like view of the world, and people like shame, like not really shame, but like averted that, have like had an aversion of that. I think that is something that is like valid to be cringe. But like most of the time, it's just
like a lot of the things
existing.
that people consider cringe is just people existing and being authentically themselves, right? Like a lot of people, like autistic people, so speaking on neurodivergency, a lot of autistic behaviors are conceptualized as cringe, right? Like with like hand flapping or like repetitive motions, stimming, difficulty with social interaction. That's conceptualized as cringe entirely because people are projecting their own social anxiety onto them, right? Like their own fear of existing authentically or ignoring a social convention in favor of being truly themselves. Like a lot of that, it also just comes from bigotry, obviously, but like it's like,
no, I totally agree.
Cringe is
100%.
fake. Cringe doesn't exist. It exists in you alone. It does not exist in the world. There's no such thing as a person being cringe. There's such a thing as you cringing at something because of a thing which is in you. Like it's anyway, character design.
And I think that's, I think that is, I have no notes on this. I find that like very unique with the, again, mixing these two things, the monster motif. So again, it's stylized in a way, but it's recognizable, which again, I like that. I quite like that. They have the little pet as well. Like, I think it's supposed to be chat. So it's like a mini me kind of situation. And there's a lot of accessories as well, bad accessories as well, which again, I like that.
Yeah, the
I think
multiple
that's cool.
eyes I think are a very good like iconic feature of the character.
Yeah,
like,
especially because like this is where you mostly see the character, right? This is again, VTubing is like a lot of the times you're just seeing the upper body, so focusing on that and these features being the tongue as well. Although I don't, do bats have long tongues, or is it just like
some bats do? Yeah, fruit bats. There's bats that eat nectar out of flowers, and they have very long tongues to get to the nectar down in the flower. So there's a few bats that have that feature. The thing I would say, like the thing you could push a little bit harder is, given that it's a spider character, you can push on the segmented exoskeleton of a spider, like the way that a spider is like has these segmented body parts around the joints, especially.
You can make the arms,
you can definitely
like
push that a little bit on the arms and
fleshy.
Fingers,
right? You can make it
so
like
that it's chitinous.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I wouldn't even think about that because, again, I just kind of like where it was. But yeah, you can make the fingers more creepy, right? Just push that. Although I don't know.
Not
again,
even necessarily creepy. Like you can make them look like sort of shiny and sleek and gorgeous. You can use that to do sharp nails, for example. Like you can do a lot with that. I think like you could definitely bring a little bit more of the spider into the character. The main spider features there are multiple arms and the eyes. And I think there's a few more physical features of spiders. That could be brought in. To be more explicitly.
Yeah, I think the bat is the one that is currently dominating, right? The spider has like, aside from the eyes and the hands, not really much else in the mouth. So if you want to incorporate more of the spider, that's also kind of cool.
I would say that's the main thing in terms of making the character read, because the character is supposed to read as a half bat, half spider. I think there's a little bit more of the spider that could be pushed there to make sure that it really clearly shows up as, okay, this isn't just a freaky bat. This is a mixture between a bat and a spider.
Right? Like it's not just like a generic Oni, for example, which a lot of the Oni designs also do these like multiple eyes and multiple hands. So it would stand out more as a spider, right?
Yeah. Like
I
definitely,
do like that they've just said, "Oh, I like Devil May Cry." That's the close because I like
Yeah,
Devil May
like
Cry.
that-
Unironically think
cool.
that's
Like-
like more like again.
I think that's cool to wear that on your sleeve, like to be obvious about. I really like how Nero dresses in Devil May Cry 4. I want to dress.
I
the
was
same
a
way.
kid.
Cool,
I got
do
that
it.
PS3, and when I got Devil May Cry 4 back in 2008 or 10, that was cool as shit, dude, and that stuck with me.
That's the coolest shit you've ever seen when you're like 12 years old, right?
With like a really banging soundtrack, dude. There's some things that are like so unironically genuine that I can never in good conscience call it cringe. There's a lot of stuff from the thousands that I like playing retro games, right? A lot of my streams are very niche by nature, and there's a lot of games that are they better left forgotten. Man, the early 2000s, we were really, really easy to impress. I unironically play like an hour of Shrek 2 on the PS2. I like Shrek. I am not playing that game again.
I heard it was a pretty decent little platformer.
It's a little platform,
for the
but
time.
man, it out of all the platforms, that is certainly one of them. But there's a lot of cool stuff as well. That's actually why there's a certain shame, because I think there's a lot of like, I think B tier, I call them B tier bangers, because it's like games that I know will never get a remaster because they didn't make enough to earn a name, right?
Yeah, and they don't have a fan base.
But they're like so cool. Like imagine seeing this with like new graphics and quality of life and new, like, sometimes the control scheme is also kind of weird as hell. You know, because people will figure it out.
Ring of Red on the PlayStation 2. Look it up. Ring of Red. It's like that's my white whale of a game. It's like Ring of Red. It's this mecha game, right? Like where you're playing mecha. It's a tactical RPG, but it's set in the 1960s.
Is it from the Xbox?
So all of the mechas are.
Is it on the Xbox?
I think it came out on Xbox. Yeah.
Because there's like, is it the one that has like a
PS2 primarily.
really weird control that you had like a million buttons and you had to play them?
Oh no, that's a different one. That's the tank simulator game kind of thing. What was it called? Steel Battalion, something along those lines. Ring of Red is a tactical RPG, and it's all of the mechs are made of like, they're diesel and they're made of like industrial steel, and they're huge and clunky and like these very
that's cool as shit.
chunky industrial machines. It's very, very cool. It got no press. It had no fan base. It'll never get a remake. Konami's gonna leave it to die.
It's gonna die, and
but it's one of my games that's like, this game. The vibe of this game is so good.
Yeah, for sure, dude, for sure. What else do we got here? This is Zungy Bungy. Zombie delinquent that is fueled by coffee, I'll go hungry. Design was way back in college. Many odd projects had me tired and Walking Dead. Later took inspiration. I'm glad that you made a zombie. It's just like, that's just me for real. Later took inspiration from Sukeban, delinquent girl fashion, and added elements to pay homage to my home of Hong Kong. Here you
Interesting.
are. I don't know about the delinquent. VTubers are very
Sukeban. It's a
Japanese-centric.
specific Japanese subculture of like an archetype of a delinquent girl who's like aggressive and powerful and like kicks the ass of all the boys, and like there's a specific aesthetic of girl gangs that exists in like anime and manga that I think they're referring to there. I don't know enough about it to really assess the accuracy of it, but it's a cool thing to take inspiration from.
I also find it fun that like they've just taken the whole zombie, but instead of like being like, oh, zombie apocalypse, being like, no, it's just I fucking died because I'm overworked, and that is just that is just like me for real. I can respect that. Of being like, yeah, you just overworked, so you're just a zombie. You just fucking died from overworked. But here we are. You're still grinding. You're on that Sigma grind set. That is, I can respect that.
I like the color scheme on this one. Like it's like you got the red, you've got the burgundy rather. You got the green, you got the black, and that's like 3 colors, no more, no less. I think that's very effective. Like to keep a very simple color scheme for something like this. It like, again, a good idea to make something that's iconic and easy to draw fan art of is to not put too many colors on it, because then those colors become identifiable like a flag.
It's a delinquent gangster girl. I love the Sukeban split in the dress. In general, love a woman that can beat me up. I mean, again, a lot of VTuber designs are very appealing, so, you know. But yeah. I'm sorry I can't comment more. I would love to, but I generally, it's just something that is outside of my reach, so I don't want to speak on something that don't know. I always abstinate myself, but I do like the design. Again, it's very anime, of course, as most of the VTubers are. But I do like they're going for like a different kind of zombie. It's not just like rotten kind of like undead zombie. It's just like somebody that just died, but they kept on living. So, you know.
Yeah, they're doing the stitches around like the various bits of the limbs.
There were other artworks. They have sent more, but I just had to pick one because of the overlay. I don't know how to put slideshows on slideshows. So again, I just had to pick one. I just picked the one that had the whole full character. But there were other outfits that were like more dead, like rotting dead. Yeah. But I think this is this is the one that is most consistent with like the different artworks they sent.
Certainly that would be like my point of feedback is like you have this character who's a zombie girl specifically. I think you can push the zombie thing a little bit more. Like I think there's space to do a little bit more with the zombie thing, specifically like incorporating the imagery of death as a thing, right? And like if you don't want to push it too far to make it gross, right? Like the thing, I maybe have one of the hands just be a skeleton hand, right? Like you have the half sleeve thing on the coat there. Like maybe just have a skeleton arm coming out of that. Like add one little thing, or just have one skeletal finger. That could be a way to add.
What is
that.
Something that like could be
anything
like imagery?
skull, anything bones. That instantly puts people in mind of, okay, death, like this is undeath themes. That's a way to do it. The other thing would be to visibly make them stitched together out of body parts from different bodies is the other thing, like different skin tones, different like physical features across various body parts. I don't think that's what they're going for though. Like they don't seem to be going for like a
right?
Frankenstein thing.
Yeah, this is more like undead. Well, I mean,
it's more
like if you're gonna go as undead generic, you can. There's a lot of undeads in like there's like the Japanese undead is more like just like pale, just regular person with like a covering on the face or something like that. While like Western is more like rotting zombies, like decay. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like.
Yeah, it depends on the style.
If you were to mix some styles, I would love to like give better like interpretations of the character design. I just don't know what
because like I think the Sukaban thing comes across. Like I don't know what the elements are that pay homage to Hong Kong because I'm not very familiar with Hong Kong culture, but like the Sukaban thing definitely comes across. Like that's absolutely there at a glance.
Maybe she's like a delinquent girl. Like she's like, oh, she's a delinquent girl that's like such an attitude that she just kept on living because that's just her like girl boss almost. You know what I mean?
And I like the top on her, like this like sort of like athletic sort of swimsuit top kind of thing. Like that's very effective, I think, in terms both of making the character look like defiant and athletic, but also like of adding a little bit of that attitude to them. The main thing about this character is I couldn't tell you that this was a zombie character at a glance. Yeah, and it's stitched onto the skin. I think that's a very cool detail. The main thing about this character is I couldn't tell you that they were a zombie at a glance, right? Like I think there's if you wanted that to read very clearly, there's a few more things you could do to add.
I mean, if I didn't zoom in on the stitches, it could go unnoticed against that. Like, what do you read from a glance, right?
Yeah,
I read the clothing. And I read the bat. There's also like a something tied to the bat. I don't know if this is meant to have any significance.
It's a streamer that I think maybe that's an imagery that's supposed to evoke Hong Kong in some way. Like,
yeah, they did mention the Hong Kong homage. Again, I would love to comment more about it's one of those limitations where like this would have to be more than just a little paragraph, and I think that's just again I think I would love to see more on that. But that's just how I read. Again, if this is like something that how you read, and again, if you're like making this, especially if you're making this from a culture, for example, like from a culture that is niche to a broader, you got to make certain things more readable, because maybe if you are from that, you'd be like, oh, that's like that, and that makes sense. But to a broader audience, they'll be like, they wouldn't get it as much. So make it more pronounced.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I mean, that might also be an unsolvable problem, because like it is a thing of like local cultural references are almost impossible to communicate without spelling them out. Like without being very, very like, this is what this is and this is what that means, and it means that because of it exists in a national context. Like some things are just not. That's the other thing about character design. Is like oftentimes it's desirable to tell a character's story at a glance just by looking at them, but there are things that like sometimes some things just have to be explained. Some things you just have to have the
Unavoidable.
conversation. You can't get it across in design, right? Like there are things like that, and national symbols tend to be like that.
It's
like,
cool that you have
anything
it.
that's a national
It's cool that
symbol
it's having it,
is
though.
usually something you have to explain.
It's cool that it's having, though. Something.
Yeah, like I think it's a nice idea to like recall some of the heritage in their home in that way. Like,
Especially because,
I
like,
think
for
that's
example, a lot of these things as well. For example, right? For example, a character will go on mainstream from one of these things. I think, what was it? There was like a niche, like little thing from, I think it was Ghost of Tsushima. They had like a more like interior part of Japan culture, where it was like it wasn't like Tokyo and all the big cities. It was more like farmland and a lot of stuff. And I'm not sure if it was Ghost of Tsushima. That was one of these games, and because it wasn't like lost on its roots. But because when it made light, when light was shined on it, and people explain it, people got interest in that culture. So if you have that, you don't have to change it. But when you do go on the spotlight, you'd be like, oh, people will be like, oh, I got to know some more about Hong Kong culture, right? Or be like, oh, I didn't know what Sukeban was. That's just something that I learned today, and you had to explain it to me, sure, but I got that was interesting, right? So you don't have not everything is visible at a glance, but I don't think that you need to give that up, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's contextual.
this is Roy Chiato. Now we gotta go more on the Genshin kind of designs. This is very Genshin inspired.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some.
Is a bunny coffee
inspiration
themed
there.
VTuber specialized in hosting and voice hacking. Core inspiration comes from the change in my own exploring masculinity. Again, that kind of stuff as well. I believe he had like more of like a femme model, and then he's like leaning more into like a more still mask, but with a few elements of like femininity sprinkled on top of it from his own experiences. We use Genshin Impact and Honkai Rail as an inspiration for the pink as the primary noticeable color in the hair, complementary colors that of coffee themed for the rest of the outfit. There you go.
Yeah, I can definitely see the MiHoYo
Genshin,
inspiration there, like that.
This
like,
is
not
very
just in terms of the
MiHoYo,
art
this
style,
guy
but also
here, right?
but also the costume design. Like it falls very much into that bracket. And given that it's intentional, like given that it's on purpose, that works, right? Like clearly that is what they are going for. And like you could tell me that was a character from a MiHoYo game, and I would believe you, 'cause, like,
if somebody said, "Oh, MiHoYo just leaked a new character. This is like a support character that like does a little like gotcha. No, sorry, not gotcha. Espresso like thing to heal you." I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. So again, there's no shame in taking things that you enjoy, even if they're like kind of mainstream.
Again, like with the Devil May Cry thing, like this is something they enjoy. This is something that's authentic to them. So it's good to take inspiration from it. I like the repeated motif, the folding on the sleeves and then down into the
hands. The gloves.
The glove things. I like that. I think that could probably be repeated again in a couple of places on the character. Like you could reinforce that. You could really
It's kind of here as well. I think it's
a
kind of
little
here
bit
as
on
well.
the boots, right? It's a little bit on the boots. I think you could emphasize it a little bit more.
There's also the little stars.
I think
This
you
is
could
also
use it
very
on the
Genshin.
collar.
The little stars is also very Genshin.
Yeah, the little charms and stuff. That's a very Genshin Impact sort of design thing. I think you could use that shape maybe on the collar as well, maybe on the vest. Like, I think it's very that little shape language thing of the folded sleeves and stuff. Repeating that a few more times in the design, I think, could be quite cool and add some coherency.
I like the color.
repetition
I
of
like the
star
color
motif.
as well. The color palette is very like, it's pastel, but also like it's such a low
It has contrast,
but
yeah.
because of the brown, it pops. Like if you were to take this color in a vacuum, this is like a very pale pink. Like the purple is a lot more high contrast, but this is like a very pale pink, but it still pops because of the brown and the white, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, like there's a contrast in the. It's a matter of contrast in values, right? Like rather than absolute contrast, and in that sense, it works quite well. Yeah, like given what they say the character is supposed to express, absolutely. Like this looks like a sort of barista or host at a high fancy sort of coffee
There would be
bar
like
where
there'll be
you
like
also
a
get,
like a
attention
meeting
from the waiters.
like a meeting place, and they'll like be like serving you coffee, and like sometimes they'll like deal information about like some fantasy like thing.
Yeah. And like the gender thing as well, like the characters definitely mask in their body presentation, right? Like they have the sort of the slight Dorito shape of like the chest that sort of broadens out into this Y shape. Like that's classic sort of high masculinity sort of thing. But then also a little bit of that midriff. Like we see a little bit of crop top, we see the belly button, we see
The
like
face
the
is also
cleavage,
very
which is
soft. The face is also like a very soft
design
face.
aesthetic, right? Like
Which I like that. I like that this again,
like
like very like it's exploring a different kind of masculinity without committing
there's a little
hard
bit of
into
Playboy
one.
bunny in there actually, which a good thing to take given that it is a bunny character. But like with the collar and like the little clasp and then the cleavage down, like there's a cool
the
little
midriff
mix
as
of
well,
like
it's
introducing
showing
some,
a little bit of skin here that's like, you know, kind of slutty.
yeah, there's some stereotypical feminine design features being used here in a very interesting way, I feel.
That is very
And like
cool.
yeah, that's a successful design. Like again, in terms of things to push, I think the double folded thing on the sleeves and on the gloves, I think that could be repeated a couple more times across the character. I think maybe you could do a little bit more with the bunny thing. Like maybe you could give him something that looks like whiskers. Maybe you could give him a nose that's a little bit more bunny prominent. Like that.
Make it like a little rosy as
button
well.
nose.
Don't like white rabbits have like little rosy noses? Like if you just give it like maybe a
if
little
he's supposed
blush.
to be a white rabbit, you could play with red as a portion of the color scheme. I don't think I would introduce more colors to the scheme necessarily.
I think the color scheme is color wise. I think it's perfect. I wouldn't change the colors as well.
Yeah,
Especially because it's such a good
It is
contrast
like-
to the brown, right? The coffee brown.
yeah.
Like if you were to mess that, I
only
think it would
risk
like,
of like
you know what I mean? Fight it almost.
yeah, the risk of doing something that's so clearly MiHoYo, like Honkai Star Rail inspired, is that people might not identify it as a thing that's personal to the person themselves, right? Like they might just read it in the context of the inspirations, which is, if you wanted to avoid that, the thing I would do is add one thing that's very clearly not MiHoYo inspired, like one thing that's like, oh shit, this is their thing only. Something that's a little bit maybe dissonant with the design, but which introduces a specific, this is my thing.
A different
this is
body
my
type, like
personality.
MiHoYo would never.
Or a different body type, yeah. Like, but like just one thing that's like, this is something that only this person would have in there as part of their
A
design.
woman
MiHoYo would
with
never
less
do
than
this.
2% body fat. That's crazy. You're insane. MiHoYo
Yeah.
would never.
Like
I
that,
don't
in
wanna-
terms of personalizing the design, I would say have one feature that's like MiHoYo would never put that on a character. Like MiHoYo wouldn't do that.
That's
only
actually a good
you would
like
do that.
like exercise. What like if you're taking from your inspirations, like again Genshin, what would Genshin never do? That you
Yeah,
could.
facial hair and body hair are like two options. Like this is a furry character, you could give him a little bit of body hair, maybe like test it out, see how it works, like how it fits with the version of masculinity that you're playing with.
Well, just again,
That's an option, right?
yeah, for sure, for sure. What else do we got? Oh, this is one that actually got a lot of traction on Twitter. This is actually quite an interesting design. It's Weeping Miyu,
Oh,
a
she's a-
shy weeping angel VTuber who freezes quite literally from social anxiety and fear. When the heart rate, instead of like being looking, when the heart rate is high, she freezes into a statue and covers her face. And the brand on the shoe is supposed to be a poem, symbolism thing, shadow reflection kind of thing.
Yeah, character from Doctor Who, like the Winging Angel is like a monster from the Doctor Who
Doctor
TV
Who.
series.
I think
Yeah, they only
this
move
is
when you're
interesting
not looking
in
at
a very
them.
different layers. First, animifying Doctor Who is also kind of like already funny because I don't know if it's public
horrible, yeah.
domain yet because Doctor Who is
It
quite
not-
old.
It's very much not.
But I do like, again, this is not the kind of thing that they would pursue it, right? But I do like
they don't shit.
I do like
about
that
this
it's
is
not
right
about the
infringement.
looking, it's about the anxiety. Again, you can make this
I
very
think that's a
moe.
very clever way, because like in Doctor Who, the concept of the Weeping Angels is that they can move incredibly fast, but only as long as nobody's looking at them, right? So if you're away for 1 second, they will distance and kill
will
you
pounce you.
instantly, right? Yeah, that's the horror theme. They're turning that around by saying, you know, when you look at them, they freeze because they can't move, right? Like it's a social anxiety thing. that's very clever as a concept. I think that's very clever as a way to use
that's why
the
it got so much
features.
traction. This got a lot of traction on Twitter when it came out, and I think that's deserved.
Like using features of monster to do some personal, like to actually explore an emotional thing. I think that's very adorable. I think that's very
Very cute as
effective,
well.
very clever.
Yeah, and again, this is where like you would say again, we were saying before like how anime styling is like it's kind of like been there and done there. But again, taking this to like a completely different concept and introducing that and like twisting certain things to like make it unique in its own way. Because again, this is very obviously a weeping angel. Everybody knows. The creator also knows as well. But it doesn't feel like just a weeping angel. It's got the whole like anxiety like mixed on top of it. It is also supposed to be very cute. It's not horror at all. So like taking a horror monster and making it to like a cute moe and anime character is also kind of like an interesting thing on its own, and I like that. I think that's like very unique as well. That's like super interesting.
Yeah, I think it's like, and this is one of the places where like the thing I would question is like, is the like the big titty and like the cleavage, again, if this is how the person wants to present themselves, then that's good. Like they should have that. It is one of the things, if you wanted to lean into the design specifically of this is a very shy character, aesthetically, in terms of character design, shy characters would tend to cover themselves up more. Like they would tend to try and cover their bodies away rather than show off, right? Like as a matter of character design aesthetic, again, if the person wants to present themselves this way, that's the main thing that matters. But in terms of if you wanted to emphasize the fact that the character is shy, then like having clothing that covers them up a lot, especially baggy clothing that they can hide in, that's a design feature that would communicate that more specifically.
Although,
I think although also
anime wise, I suppose, like again, taking of course the appeal aside, like having a character that is like dressed this way but then gets shy when you look at them in their eyes, it's also kind of like
it's also an anime trope. Yes,
it's
like
an anime
the
trope.
shy character who's busty and very sexy, but like it's an anime trope also. Yes, absolutely.
But again, I think like tropies are fine, especially when they're like in this very
if they're used intentionally
in this very different context, because again, this is a weeping angel. They're not meant to be cute, but this works perfectly. I you know what I mean? That's actually why I got so much attention, and when I saw that, I was like, weeping dude, who would take British TV show for a culture for anime? Like I think the only one that I've seen was Sherlock that was like taken as inspiration. But Doctor Who's like, again, also Doctor Who's also like I have seen a little bit of it, but there's like so much of it that there's no way I can possibly.
Yeah, there's like what is it, like 40 years of it at this point? It's been
I know,
going for
right?
a very long time.
But taking that and making something unique like this is genuinely inspired, right? And
yeah. And I do take on this character, like we talked about this, like cleanliness and like cleanness previously. I like that this character being made of marble, being made of stone, like they are stained, they're dirty, they're cracked, right? Like you can see the visual effect of being made of
the crack
stone
is
in that
also
way.
supposed to be about again linking back to the anxiety and the symbolism. They said shattered reflection, right? So again,
like it reflects the fragility of the character, that they're very shy, right? Like that they are like, I like that. That's a very good use of those design features to emphasize
I think
that.
If somebody
part.
made a model of this, something that would be like genius. I don't know if they do, because I haven't seen the proper model. I've only seen the concept. It's like hiding with the wings. If they hid with the wings.
Yeah, that would be a very cool gesture to have on the character, that they could put the wings in front of their face to hide away. That would definitely work as like an animation feature.
It also is something that, like, since it's supposed to be a statue, again, this is like linking back to the technology, right? Live 2D is notoriously very stiff, because the only tracking that you get in Live 2D, you can look from my model. The model moves predeterminedly based on the face. The only tracking that it has, you can do your hands as well, but mostly is the face. The face is where it dictates what the body is. Any other thing is an expression that changes those parameters. So using that stiff movement to be like, no, she's a statue, she's made of stone, and that's why she has her arms locked in certain positions, or like either touching her face, hiding, or like just holding her hands on her hips, is genuinely inspired, because again, when it would be moving, it would be stiff. So she being a statue, that leans into the strengths of the technology, right?
Yeah, that's another thing is like if it works very well with the rigging and things like that, that you can do that to make the character look stiffer than in that specific way. Very clever.
I think this is genuinely inspired. When I saw this, I was like, that's genuinely amazing. Now this is Lei Chen, cursed dragon thunder banished from the heavens. I wanted to portray ideas of being a more savage as my body rests against the effects of a blood curse. I took inspiration from kinesiology and muscle binding with my tattoos to show how the curse is restrained. I wanted to pay homage to my own Chinese heritage. What is wait, let me Google that.
Kinesiology is it's the science of, not necessarily, but it's the study of the body and muscles and how they fit together. And how they work.
Movement.
I can't remember if it's a pseudoscience.
It's a human movement, a study of human movement to physical wellness and well-being. Let me check if it's just. It's a scientific study. It's a scientific study. It's
a scientific study. Yeah, because I wasn't. It was like an alternative
like movement.
Thing.
It's like pretty much like
traditional
focusing on movement and well-being.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's a dragon.
So,
I mean, purple is very like
lean into
purple
the
is
idea
very
of savagery, right?
Purple is very like this dark purple is like very used to being like curses against, especially against like golden stuff, right? It's like the corruption almost.
Yeah, like evil tends to be purple, right? Like evil and magic and things that are unnatural. We often use purple to code for those things.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense,
I think there's also like a very serious expression as well. The teeth are very sharp as well. The hair's very wild. I mean, this is supposed to be like the thunder, right? I don't know if the pale is supposed to be like the default stage or if it's like pale because of his body being affected by this, right? If you were to like up the saturation and like clean up the hair a little bit, I could totally see this character being like just a manhwa character that's like a mythic dragon that descends down on the people and like it's worship, right? So having this like more disheveled look, I see. It's again very basic design language, but it's certainly interesting. It plays for its strengths.
I mean, clearly wild hair and like the fur thing on the fur collar over the shoulders is very much about evoking like that savagery that they're talking about. Same thing with the sharp, same thing with the eyes. It's all about this intensity of wildness that's clearly supposed to be a part.
Yeah, for sure. Also, yeah, the internet is acting up again. I'm very sorry. I wish I could have like more music playing, but the internet was struggling as well as the freezes. That's just because I'm traveling and I'm multi-streaming and I'm on a PC that is. I should probably upgrade it. It's just, you know, resources.
A little powered for what you need.
I know that I demand a lot from this little boy. It's a ROG ally that I got like as an impulse buy, and I was like, oh, if I'm gonna have this, I have to use it for work. And for most of the part, it does. But it sometimes have hiccups like this. So I mean, it is holding, but like, okay, the music is making it chug a little bit, and sometimes it chugs a little bit on the internet. I do love it, but I feel like it's just barely not enough. And I know I demand a lot of it. VTubing in general has a lot of like moving parts from the model and the triggers for the toggles, right, and everything. This is all like underneath, apart from multi-streaming, which is already also heavier than just regular. So
yeah, I think there's some websites, like some web services you can use where you stream to one thing and then this website handles the strain of streaming to the
it's just so expensive.
Twitch
you have to keep in mind,
yeah,
Brazilian currency converts 6 to 1 to dollars.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to a third world country. It's rough living. But it's not anything too bad. Hey, Miska, a lot of stuff. Thanks so much for Prime. But I do like it. It's just, yeah. It's very, I can see the inspirations. If anything, I think it's very like manhwa almost. I think that like, because like from what I've seen, and I'm not an expert on it, but I have like been getting into a little bit more. The Chinese like myth, they usually have like very fancy clothing. There's a lot of like embroidery and the like multiple layers and layers of like clothing, and like there's a lot of stuff you can do. And I like the arms, but the rest of the clothing I think is like, it's so tamed, right? This is supposed to be like a dragon, like a mythic dragon. So why is he
I
not
mean, that
like
would be
more
my main
opulent?
point of feedback is like it's supposed to be a very savage character who's cursed, who has like a blood curse and things on them. And like the hair being very wild and like having the fur collar is a good start for that. I would look into getting clothes that look a little bit rougher, maybe like getting clothes that clearly have been torn or
maybe
damaged.
an opulent clove, like a really like fancy clove that has just been torn from this wild like savagery from the blood curse.
Yeah, like from the wildness of the way that the character conducts their life, right?
Again,
like,
the conversation that we had about
emphasize...
like the conversation that we had about like, for example, like cleanliness, right? There's no rough. Everything here is too well put together. I think the only thing that I can see is like this side is a little bit cut, which could be
but that's an intentional part of the clothing. Having these like hip windows is, I believe, a part of what that clothing is supposed to do. It is the main thing. Like my main point of feedback would be like if you want to lean into savagery, wildness, like that's when you kind of have to lean into scars, damage, dirt, grime, like things like that are very effective at evoking that specific idea.
It implies a story.
Yeah, like it implies something about how the character conducts themselves in life and what they care about, right? Like a character who's very savage and very like, I don't give a shit about like social graces and stuff like that. They probably wouldn't take the time to take that great care of their clothes, right? Like they would, if something tears, yeah, fuck it, I'm not gonna fix it.
Or
just
even
leave
if
it like
that
that.
thing
Right?
with like the lightning around, it's almost like it's bursting out. So even if it's that, he wouldn't be like,
cool.
oh,
like,
my clothes
are
like my clothes just ripped, I gotta change it. Oh no. Like they would just be
I like
trying
the lightning.
to
I like
that.
the tail a lot. The tail is very cool. But that's the main thing. Like that's the main thing I could give feedback on is like the savagery could probably be emphasized a lot more with this character, because outside of that, as a character design, like I think it does exactly what it sets out to do. I like the one broken horn, for example, on the head. That's like battle damage is a great way to show that a character is savage, that they lead their life in a violent way.
They get close to the fire, right?
Yeah, like, so I think you could emphasize that more if you wanted to. But yeah, but as you say, also, it's a cultural thing, right? Like, it's a cultural thing of, like, in Chinese mythology, in those specific things, battle damage is often not incorporated as an aesthetic, right? So, like, it's a matter of, like, if it conflicts with the aesthetic that's desired, if it conflicts with how you want the character to present themselves, oh, well, then that's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is. Yeah, for sure. Especially because
like
this
the
is
color
very
scheme also,
intentionally
like the black
supposed
and
to be
whites.
like Chinese heritage. So again, if you're coming
the black
from those
and white is very
preconceptions,
effective, I think.
It's certainly unique.
Like the
as
black
well.
and white is effective. I think the purple you could probably saturate that more. You could make it more powerful or glowy a little bit to really strike the contrast with the black and white. But like outside of that, I don't really have any sort of immediate thoughts on it. It's a perfectly well put together character design. You could push a few things, but it works.
Well. The next one is Teddy Sunday.
And I think this has to be the last one at this point because it's getting a bit late where I am.
Oh, is this? I'm very sorry. This is. I haven't selected two. Oh my god, we enrolled for so long. This was supposed to be little. There were 300 submissions. This was supposed to be just a little bit. We can just speed run it a little bit and just like get at least to like 20. It's a 15 currently, right? Or if it's
well,
too late for you,
the way it's been going so far, we can't speedrun jack shit, my man.
I'm very sorry.
It would require us to stop yapping.
I'm very sorry. But this is a teddy bear who fell into a magic chocolate pool and emerged as a human bear chocolate girl. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cute.
That sounds about right. It's certainly a teddy bear girl.
And I think I would repeat some things we've said before. Like when you're dealing with a furry character design, there's definitely more pushing that could be done to incorporate animal characteristics into the character.
Maybe like chocolate.
Yeah, or chocolate for that matter.
They like magic. Like, you can like put like magic food, right?
Yeah, like there's definitely little things like that could be done. It is a very cozy, it's a very sort of, not necessarily cottagecore, but very cozy core. Like very sort of like this is a chill day at a nice cafe sort of vibe.
I think it's like
and
slice,
that's definitely
slice
there.
of life, right? Like it's just supposed to, for streaming, again, for most of these are streamers, right? It just kind of fits that vibe. This is a former painter vampiric count who's combined magic and alchemy. I mean, you can see that this is goth as fuck.
Yeah, goth as fuck. Again, given that this is a painter, given that this is an artist who works with their hands, I would give them paint stains on their hands and fingers. I would like add a little bit of mess if a character is a painter of any kind.
I mean, have you ever seen an artist that is well kept and put together?
I've met a lot of painters and artists and like traditional media. Never clean hands don't exist for them. Like they're always stained with something somewhere. Like always,
they're always
every
also
time.
working.
Outside of that,
although I like the little like.
That's a gothic baddie right there.
They're also
like
carrying
110%.
They're carrying a book and they're carrying the thing. This is like inspired from some character that's like inspiration can come at any moment. So like, you know, they just like ready to always like engage in that. This is an Eldritch cyborg. That's kind of interesting. I've never seen people do Eldritch with cyberpunk. Wanted to mix monster and cyberpunk. He lives in a cyberpunk city and is a part of a team that fights back monsters. That is so inspired.
Did you get a close-up of the mouth and the thing that they're doing there?
Oh, damn it. I misclicked.
Oh, hang on.
This is the next one. So it's got like a monster tongue alternative.
Yeah, like the monster shit there, that goes hard as shit. That's really cool.
And it goes like, again, it's the contrast with like how normal that is. So you can have like multiple stages.
Oh, that's cool. Like you can see the spine through the midriff, like that the midriff is transparent like that.
This is like
that
supposed to be robotic?
really hard.
Robotic
That
biologic.
is very cool.
Dude,
Yeah,
I've never
you could definitely
seen
emphasize that more.
I've never seen somebody take like Eldritch with cyberpunk. Oh, dude, I wish we
Yeah,
had
that
more
is
time. I'm
very
so
cool.
sorry for keeping you here rambling, but I'm having a lot of fun
that
with this like
transparency thing,
conversation.
Run with that. Do more with that transparency thing because that's cool as shit. Like, absolutely go with that.
Mm-hmm. That is, again, I think this is a very unique idea. This is got potential. She's a reptile enthusiast, rock star, dragon chameleon. Again, very furry as well.
I like the face on that one. Look, a nose that's interesting and unique.
And it's still stylized. It's still like anime.
Yeah, because like she has a little nose horn thing because she's a dragon. It's like that adds a lot to the character. That makes the character very recognizable.
And if you make it like a super fantasy creature, then the casual clothing becomes like a standout, right? If you make it more monster-like, these casual clothes will be like a lot more special on them. I wish we had more time to give everybody attention, but this was already me like self-selecting so much. That was like 300 something 80 submissions. I wish I could give time to everybody. I hope people don't get mad every time we do these. There's already somebody that gets upset, and I get so sad because I really want to give. There's a lot of advice that is also like. There's a lot of people, for example, I saw a lot of submissions that were like cute kitsune girls. There was like 4 of them. There's a lot of stuff that like these advice
they're popular.
be like, again, it's very common. There's a lot of common ground. So again, I think all these advice can be used for pretty much everybody, right? So I just hope that people don't get upset for not being included. I genuinely try my best. I've spent until like 4 a.m. yesterday finishing these lines because I was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, like dealing with submissions from people anytime for anything is a lot because you have to select away so many things that are so cool.
I know. This is a Victorian dress era from manhwa, from my manhwas, and adding latte and coffee to a dress theme. Oh, this has got like if you want to add like coffee motifs and like fancy drinks to dresses, I think that like works super well. That lends itself super easy.
Yeah, like I would say the thing in terms of like if you wanted to get a latte theme into that, think of latte art, right? Like latte art is like you have this dark brown surface of the coffee and then these
patterns.
Smooth, like very streamy lines that are used to create you could definitely do something like that. I think because the color is very one color on that thing,
you could use
add
the harsher brown
by,
of the hair and just like make it more on the dress. Like,
yeah, like you could evoke the idea of latte art on the dress or something like that. That would be my main thing, is like I think you could do more with the colors on the dress on that one. Like I think you could do more to evoke coffee there, but I think the hair does a great job. I like the spoon a lot. The spoon is very cool as a little thing of like with some whipped cream on it or whatever it's supposed
especially
to be.
if it's supposed to be
and
like
it's a very
carrying
cute
it
character
around.
design also.
Yeah, for sure. Makeup part 2. No, I don't like forcing my guests onto part 2s. They have their own stuff to do. If he ever wants to, that be my guest. But I don't like doing like forcing people to have part 2.
Genshin Impact, take some fucking notes, honestly.
Oh my god,
There's
yeah,
a
this is
chubby
supposed
character.
to be like I believe I don't know if they included that, but a half demon drank an experimental healing potion, turned themselves, changed their biology, The idea came from a round gummy bunny, like a slime I drew. Like a demon raspberry gummy bunny. Yeah, that's a different body type. And it's still appealing. It's not...
Yeah, that's still a very hot,
still
sexy
very
character design,
sexualized,
clearly.
it's still very appealing, but it's just a different body. Genshin could never imagine. I'm not gonna keep rambling. We gotta speed this run. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I like it though. Like I think you could do more, like emphasize the gumminess, like a little bit of translucency or transparency.
That would be
on
like
the character
really cool.
Could do a lot to make the character feel more like a candy gummy kind of thing. But that's quite cool. Like
I like that this is like
nice.
you got
like
the transition as well. You know what I mean? But I do think so too. It's also like I suppose it's also like what the artist can do, right? But yeah adding some
I would also
translucency.
question. There's an asymmetry that's evoked here with like the fishnet and the sock on one leg.
Is this supposed to be like her turning into, or like if she's already
turning into
full?
goop, I think. But also, like, if you're gonna play with that kind of asymmetry, I think it should reflect through more of the design that there is this asymmetry, because it is this character who's transforming between two forms. I would emphasize the asymmetry more,
even,
like
right?
make more
like the
things.
conflict between like the demon and the gummy, and like, you know what I mean, play around with that. Like they just like barely mash together to like. Again, I think this was like trying to save this person. This is the Monster High girl. I remember this one. Monster monster made by the early 2000s. That's Y2K as fuck. By a man obsessed with the fusion of science and magic. His design was inspired by Monster High dolls and aesthetic in general. As more of a deeper lore,
I can see the Monster High inspiration.
Oh yeah, this is early 2000s as fuck. There's like a million like Bratz, like Monster High.
Yeah, and it's also like you
Which
get
is a vibe. It is a vibe.
Detail overload from that specific era of character design. It's like that's an era of character design where you often saw characters that are very, very heavily loaded with like details and like sparkle and glitter and extra things on extra things and extra things. As a point of feedback, I would say like be very intentional about where you include like the hyper detailing, because like hyper detailing certain areas but leaving other areas a little bit more blank, that's a good way to draw attention, to direct the viewer to pay attention to certain parts of the character. So like I would think very carefully about like, where am I going to put the hyper detailing, where am I going to put all of the stuff, because that's a place you can draw attention to, that's a place you can guide the viewer's eye to the parts of the character that are most important.
Nyla was talking about this. She was saying that like it's very hard to like draw the line between like just vomiting, like I think she called color vomit or something, the just like overloading with detail, and and the line.
I think
between,
the
like,
color scheme is very
intentional.
well disciplined though. Like the color scheme is very restrained and very like it's holding back. It has a little bit of that green in there as a but that's the color scheme is very well managed. Like the color scheme helps it to not look
darker
like
as
just
well. The monster parts being
glitter
darker.
vomit. Yeah.
The clothes like hold a little bit of like the hair color and the darkness of the monster parts. That is very cool as well. Now you have Cupid Reaper collects the hearts of pure and some broken. Do experiments. Try 2 my model body arts based on likeness and facial features. Creations of Cupid. And Lawyer Go, now she's traveling in the land and angels and hells to possess. That's a lot of stuff. It's got Cupid Reaper, angel demon.
Maybe do an experiment. So there's a scientist thing that going on there as well, which I think is being evoked by the lab coat sort of arrangement that she's got on there. I like the contrast between the character being so cute and pretty, and then
doing these like
carrying around
experiments.
actual human hearts in jars. I think that's a good gap thing to play with. Absolutely.
Yeah, Moe.
And I think you could emphasize that more. Like if you wanted to play a little bit more with that, like you could definitely have more of like like 1 or 2 more gruesome features that sort of imply like the freakiness of that particular arrangement. I quite like that,
especially because it like highlights. It's like the magical girl thing of like highlighting these like cute and basic like fantasy things with like actual horror and like just genuine horror. I think like really carries a lot of like the basic, takes a lot of the basicness out of it, which is a trap when you're trying to do this kind of stuff.
And I think general advice that like I'm landing on here, that's always like, if you have a thing like a feature, like for example this character has the hearts in jars, if you have a thing that's like, this is my thing, this is my special thing, you can always lean harder on that. Like you can always go harder on that. You can always say, this is going to be my thing, I'm going to be a freak about this thing, this is like and emphasize that and really bring it forward, because that'll always make your thing stand out.
Speaking of thing that stands out, this is Nepzilla 1/2 dual persona, inspired by the 99 Godzilla design. Make him with a mix of like the boss. Also wanted to take some element ideas from the theme before. Yeah, that was a theme before. I had to choose one, so he was talking about the boss, so I went with this. Yeah,
so we're doing like a sort of mafia boss gangster
Godzilla
thing.
Yeah, mafia boss Godzilla thing. That's kind of cool. I fuck with that. I mean,
as an idea, that's very cool. I think definitely you could.
There are some monster elements to the design.
I like I like the monster feet on that one. Again,
the arms are also like claws. These are also like claws. But everything else is like, and I guess he could also like cover himself with the jacket, right? So he could walk around like kind of like Swain does in his like thing, where he just like, has this coat covering him, and then he like pulls his arms out and it's like this monster arm, and he like raises a goon on the one hand, is like, do not test my patience, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I would look into like more specifically mobster fashion. Like it's a thing about like what kind of gangster, what kind of mobster do you want to be? Because there's many different styles. Like Yakuza fashion is a very different thing than like 1920s American gangster fashion, which is a very different thing than Russian gangster fashion, right? And I think I'm not really getting a clear vibe of what kind of like mobster gangster boss kind of character, crime boss kind of character he is.
I think if I remember correctly, this is like kind of Yakuza.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit Yakuza depends on the kind, but like Yakuza allows for some more extravagant features.
Tattoos as well. Tattoos is a very Yakuza thing.
Tattoos are very important to Yakuza culture, as I understand it also. So that's something maybe to lean into.
Actually, in most like criminal things, there's a lot of like terminology and like symbolism with like tattoos. When you go to prison, for example, there's a lot of like symbolism with like what kind of tattoos do you have in your history. This is also something that is very interesting as well. I think this is one is going to be, this kind of got like a Tim Burton vibe with the wings. Only seal butterfly VTuber, aimed to mix comfy, cute, and horror.
A mixture.
Has elements of me combined into black streaks and left eye being blind. Big fan of horror aesthetics. I own 6 huskies, so my mascots are huskies too. I mean, you know, if you like huskies, there's no shame in that. Like just putting it as a mascot. I also love seals, butterflies, and onis, especially the small horned ones. With wings, one side being fine and the other side being not, resembles my depression and anxiety. Is this
so we're cramming a lot into this design. Yeah,
I don't see the seal.
A little bit.
I don't see the seal aside from like the light blue. I see the oni. I see the butterflies.
I mean, yeah, a seal is also a complicated thing to get in there. I think it's supposed to be in the sort of ethereal
like a monster face as well here.
That comes from the moth. You got like the Glasgow smile on the face. Yeah, I think definitely the seal is maybe missing a little bit. That's where I would maybe give the character a tail, like a seal's tail, for example, something along those lines. Because like it's an ambitious thing to try and combine an oni, a butterfly, and a seal.
Like Shy Lily is a thing. She's like very huge into space, and a lot of people that just put like sea creature tails tend to be compared to Shy Lily. I think that might be a reason why she just avoided that design to put the thing. Because there's a lot of things where like if somebody too big does it, you eventually be compared. So sometimes you like, it would make a lot of sense for your character, but you just don't, because you don't want to invite those comparisons, which I don't personally mind it. People are just like comparing to things that enjoy. But I get where there's some people that are trying to go for a more unique art style is kind of like thing. But you got a lot of horror going on. I like, again, this is like kind of like sexy motif with horror. You have this, the Tim Burton, I think, is like, is where
I think it's more Don't Starve than Burton, really, when you're looking at the aesthetic styling of that. Because Burton is more like spirals, and he's very into, like, his aesthetic is very into like lines on everything.
Oh, is it?
Pinstripes. A lot of pinstripes are part of his character design, and a lot of like spiral motifs and a lot of texture. And I don't really see that here so much, as I see some like Don't Starve inspirations and things like that. I like the idea of the asymmetrical wings with one set of wings being damaged. I would make the wings maybe a bit bigger, so that damage becomes more obvious, especially from the front.
And the clothes could be more monstrous.
It's definitely a striking
like
design.
This kind of like design that you have on the wings, you could have on the clothes as well, right?
Yeah, I would probably leave the clothes, because there's so much detail on the sleeves and on the wings and stuff. It's a good idea to leave the clothes relatively blank so that you don't overload the whole design with detail.
You might be
Again,
right.
detail is a way to draw the eye to specific features. Like, so if you leave parts of the design blank, that's a way to make sure the audience
Especially
isn't
what
paying
she's
attention
doing
to
already
them.
right with being a VTuber, that making the top half like more detail oriented is already like a positive thing, because that's what
Yeah,
most
like
people
you
are
have
gonna
the
focus.
skeleton thing grabbing her breasts and like the sleeves, and you have the wings. That's a lot of detail already. I think it's good not to overload it.
Sounds about right. Sounds pretty reasonable. On the Gap Moa design thing, we have a design that is an alien eldritch being seeing people's dreams and wanting to interact with them. Needs a cute form so mortals aren't as scared and having their minds broken. She saw a lot of catgirls are popular. So she wears a catgirl suit that's sewn up for herself.
We're doing the Mimikyu thing, I see.
Yeah, I find that's something that I also saw before, but that's very funny. Where you just have like, oh,
Yeah, I like
Cthulhu
that a lot.
saw that people like catgirls, so they just decided to dress. There's also a lot of like seamstry like thing. You can see the tail is supposed to be like, again,
like with the sewing needles and like
there's also stitching, which apparently this is supposed to like open up
open
This is
up into
supposed
a
to be
mouth. Yeah, I saw that.
the
Like,
tentacles.
I think that's very well done. Like, I think this
is
design
a
is
gr-
very,
this is a
very,
design
well done.
very strong.
Because it is very stereotypical cat girl VTuber cuteness anime style, but it's doing that specifically for a purpose, right? It's doing that
It's using
specifically
the trope
so that we
for a
can
reason to a twist, which is
so
very,
we can twist on it.
you know, it's the first thing that people do when there's a tropey trope that everybody's doing it, then they put it on the twist, and then when the twist becomes tropey, then they do something else with that. So again, it's Gap Moa. Gap Moa is a very established thing, and this is a very solid design. Again, this is the other one that I was talking about. I referenced this before, but this is the dreads.
Oh yeah, the
Gorgon
one with the
again,
dreads that
I think
turn-
the
like-
black hair with the black hairstyle with the Gorgon just is such a perfect fit, because it translates so naturally, right? And I know a little bit more about this than this one is written here, but this guy I think has not debuted yet, so I'm not going to say anything about that. But since I have the dreads, I try to think of a design that sort of enhances the idea of thicker hair and other features of mine, like piercings and tattoos. For colors, I went with my favorites, like Medusa from Kid Icarus. You can tell from side by side, I also liked my mythologies. I mean, yeah. If you want to make that's like a pretty super interesting male Gorgon design. And you have like the petrifying eyes.
I like that. I like emphasizing the hair.
The hair, I think, is
that
like
very
the
much.
chef's kiss. I think these were two independent designs. They're not like, I think they're not related at least. But these two, especially this in specific with the tattoos as well and the like more monstrous appearance, is like super inspired. Like genuinely, I have all the props to this. I don't know what I would give as a like different point of view.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on what like they didn't give a lot of information about the kind of things that they want to emphasize.
I think they're pre-released yet,
but, like,
so you know.
Yeah. So like I would say, like, again, identify what's the core emotional narrative feature that this character is supposed to be about. In the same, like the previous one
very
where you had
D&D.
the wings.
It's very
the
D&D
wings
as
that
well.
symbolized like anxiety and like the damage that they have inside. Like, again, find the thing.
If they're more,
'cause,
if they are more like, for example, person that is like secretive, they can have like a coat or like keep themselves hidden, right?
Yeah, something like that. Like, because the character design is like the hair thing is very, very cool. Outside of that, it's broadly quite generic. Like I don't find that there's a lot of information I can get out of just looking at it, because it kind of could be anything.
If you want to, you
as
could
it
also
is for the moment,
incorporate like
right?
more snake motifs, like scales.
Yeah,
for
that's the thing.
example.
Like, if you really want to emphasize like the Gorgon hair, maybe give them like some scaly skin that looks like more specifically like snake skin. Maybe give them a snake mouth, like something along those lines. Like you can incorporate more of the animal into that if you wanted to. If you wanted to emphasize the contrast between the snake hair and the person, that's when maybe I would go for a more human skin tone. That's when maybe I would go for more human features. Right? It depends what you want to do.
I mean, I suppose this is still being like figured out as well. This is an
Yeah,
otter.
this is going to have to
central.
be the last one, though.
All right, so we did almost all of them. This is yeah, we got plenty.
We got to 26 anyway.
Yeah, that's plenty. I think that people are not going to be upset. We did try our best. All right, this is the last final one. An otter centaur. Plus, there weren't many other otter VTubers. Using the fire theme as opposed to water is a good twist. I mean, sounds about right.
Could you give me a zoom in? Because I like the idea of a tower. Yeah, like the tower design. That's a very furry thing as well, by the way.
Feet, right? Otters do like sit on their feet like this. So making it a centaur that just stands up super high because they're just like sitting on top of themselves basically and being a centaur.
Yeah, I like the tower design. I think that's very cute. I think that's very effective and unique also. Like even among furries, you don't get as many tower designs. So I think that's very effective. I like the stylization of the hair. I like the lava theming of it. I think it's very cool. I think maybe the face needs something to make it pop a little bit more contrasts. Maybe the whiskers could be white, pure white, for example, to make them pop a little bit more. Because the hair and the face kind of fade into each other a bit. Maybe that's an intentional effect. But maybe I think it maybe...
If you add a little bit of glow underneath instead of shadow. Because this is supposed to be molten lava, right?
Yeah, like maybe especially when they get angry, maybe molten lava comes out from under their scalp. Like that's a way to do it. I think you could do a little bit more to separate the face from the hair, just for the clarity of the expression. But outside of that, quite cool. Like, and also if you're doing fire theme and stuff like that, you can do stuff like maybe they're a smith, or like maybe they have some kind of profession that relates to fire in some way. If you wanted to mess with that, because like they have the tool belt thing with the pouches.
A lot of these designs are very cool. There were a few like jokey designs as well, but a lot of these designs, like there's genuinely, this is like supposed to be like a Brazilian soda. It's like cooked. It's very funny. There's also like there's so many like interesting and like cool ideas. There's like this like honey ghost bee, right? There's like so much stuff. Like I think
there's a lot of creativity on display.
Exactly. It's just it feels like such a shame because I really wanted to cover. This is the few that I got from Blue Sky as well. I really did try to include. This is like as little people as I can include. There were, again, it's 380. I'm sorry. I really do wish I could give everybody like some attention at least. But when you put two people with ADHD,
Darkfry.
I was so excited to talk about this as well.
Your VTuber still looks like a penis, Darkfry. He's one of my friends. It still looks like a penis, Darkfry. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say like how like like making simple designs that are also unique and like
Lucian.
What is it? WSD the animation like thing that was like I got a pie.
I don't know what it is about this design. It just looks like a fucking nerd. Just a huge dork. Just a massive nerd.
Yeah, I did try to include a lot of people. It's just that we just kind of like, I'm just like showing off at this point just to like shout people out. But I am ashamed as well that, it's just kind of how it be. Again, a lot of people say like part 2, but I don't like forcing my guests to be like, again, they have like their own lives and busy, but I had a lot of fun talking to you today. So again, if you want to have
VTubers are an endless fountain of interesting ideas.
It's just because again, like there's like so much you can do, and I think that because it's again it's becoming more of an indie thing. The tools are also like becoming more normalized. For example, Unreal Engine is like very easily accessible now. There's a lot of VTubers that use Unreal Engine for their backgrounds and interactive streams. There's people that just use straight up OBS. Like the train station guy that I was talking about, he had such a heavy setup on OBS that he just went into Godot and just made like a little video game that he just plays it and it's just his stream. Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that you can do, and I find that genuinely so inspiring, like genuinely. That's why I wanted to invite you to this conversation. It just, I don't know. I really am fascinated by that, right? Because as a creator, again, having these, just like, even like looking at what other people are doing can like be a lot of inspiration as well. And I find that fascinating. But I hope you had as much fun as I did. The stream had no music for the entire time because I'm sorry, my PC is really struggling. It's just kind of how it be. But if only what was in my main setup, but I didn't want to wait too much, especially because everybody's so busy, and I get it. But I had a lot of fun. I hope you did as well, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, this was enjoyable.
And yeah, I hope you, I mean, again, if you feel like the VTubing space is very varied, but people are also very like, I think people are very chill, like, and it's just, there's a lot of creativity out there. If like I think because the mainstream is like the corporate side of VTuber, and it's the Hololives and the Vishoujos and like the big main bucks, like the same way with Twitch, for example, where most eyes are focused on like Pokimane and Kaisenat and all that stuff. I'm too old to know that. I was so I have no idea what they were up to, but I hear the headlines, right? And I think like once you like take a closer look, there's a lot of like cool ideas that people are doing there, and I just really enjoy that. So yeah, I just wanted to like have this conversation. Anyway, enough rambling, because I know it's later, you're probably super tired. If you want to like do a little last like shout out yourself, like just
no, I'm TBSkyen. You can find me under that name pretty much everywhere, primarily on YouTube. So if you want more of my design rants, go find me on there. I have a spam channel called 3BSkyen, which is 3BSkyen, which is where I do a bunch of like where I just ramble and yap about character design, not unlike this stream. So if that's what you want, you can find that channel.
He's
there.
very insightful. He's playing himself cool. His design, he overthinks everything in the best ways possible. And I find that super, super mindful, right? It's very interesting. But yeah, that was it. That was the whole 3 hours. I'm glad at least we got to manage to only 3 hours. Imagine how mindful we were. But I do think that the conversations were fun. It's just that, again, two people with ADHD having tangents about these kinds of things. I think it's just the nature of it. But I hope everybody enjoyed it as well. And again, thank you so much for everybody that sent the submissions. Thank you, TBSkyen, for coming around and joining me on this idea as well. I had a lot of fun today, and I hope you did too.
Have a good night, everyone.